Ever since ancient times, humanity has sought to know the future, to decipher the events to come, to contact the spirits, ancestors, and gods in order to somehow make life more manageable, more secure, or perchance to control others with the threat of what was to come, right? Many believed it was possible to decipher knowledge of the future from signs arriving from the natural world around us, believed as infused with supernatural energies. For example, from reading the patterns of the stars above in astrology, discerning the conditions of the entrails of animals, right? Observing the flight of birds, and especially the perceived direct human contact in a mystical way with the spirits and gods of the heavens and underworld, whether it be the biblical prophets of the Greek and Roman Pythia, or the Sibyl, in connection to these prophecies. Places of divination were designated as especially associated with these events. Oracle sites that were often quite extensive in layout and elaborate in ritual, from the Oracle of Delphi in Greece and the Oracle of Dodona in Epirus to the oracles of Didyma and Claros in Asia Minor. In many cases, the participant wishing to learn the future was led down deep tunnels into what they were told was the underworld to hear from the dead themselves about their fate or the fate of others, as in the case of the oracles of the dead at Baiae in Italy, and in the recently excavated oracle of Areopolis in Asia Minor. Beyond the Greeks and Roman world, of course, oracles were important amongst the ancient Celts and the Norse, and throughout Eurasia and into the Americas, inclusive of India, Tibet, and China. Well, we're going to be focusing in on the Greco-Roman context with a few side trips here and there. We will explore these ancient oracle sites along with the ancient understandings of their significance. That'll be important a little bit later. Because I have visited many of these sites personally, I will bring my own observations to this lecture, especially through the investigation of the archaeological discoveries made at these mystical convergence points. So we will start out with the definition of the word oracle itself, right? It is actually derived from the Latin verb ore, which means to speak, the same root that makes up the word oratorical, an oratory, but in this form relates to a sacred context, that of a priest or priestess saying words that pertain to predictions or prophetic utterances. The word oracle also connects with an actual location where these prophecies take place. So an oracle can be a person, and an oracle can be a place, a site, such as the Oracle of Delphi. The word oracle is also connected to the words themselves, uh, with or without reference to the site where it occurs. And so now we have the word oracle can be a person. The word oracle can be a place, and oracle can be what was said. It can be used, it's amazing, right? It can be used in three different contexts. So you say, hey, the oracle, okay, tell me which of the three, right? In Greek, these oracle utterances are called kreismoi. Okay. Now, in general, oracles, whether related to a person, a place, or a saying, were believed to be actual portals and powerful mediums, whether the place, the person, or the words themselves, right? So it connects, of course, obviously to the spiritual world, where access to knowledge pertaining to prophecy and fate or the will of the gods, spirits, or ancestors come through in a manner discernible for the seeker. So what I want to do is, I know we get wrapped up in modern perspectives of what an oracle is, but I thought, since we're dealing with the ancient world and focusing mostly on the Greco-Roman world, I decided to let the ancients themselves give us the definition. So I'm going to go to Iamblichus and his definition of oracles. I think that's a good thing. Now, so the ancients themselves constantly pondered what went on during oracles and in divination. Iamblichus, he was born around 245 and he lived until 325 CE. He's a famous Neoplatonist. He's a philosopher. And he investigated this mystery, beginning by asking the question. He says, what is it that takes place in divination? For example, when we are asleep, we often come through dreams to a perception of things that are about to occur. We are not in ecstasy, full of commotion, for the body lies at rest. Yet we do not ourselves apprehend these things as clearly as when we are awake. Unquote. Here, Iamblichus states that it was commonly believed that prophecies could arrive via an individual's dreams when the mind is asleep. Yet, as he admits, they are not often entirely clear. For the body is at rest, and so is still. Let's go to the first image, shall we? All right, there we go. There's all Iamblichus. In contrast to sleep, Iamblichus then states, in like manner, many also come to a perception of the future through enthusiastic rapture and a divine impulse, when at the same time so thoroughly awake as to have the senses in full activity. Nevertheless, they by no means follow the matter closely, or at least they do not attend to it as closely as when in their ordinary condition. Unquote. Thus, for the seer, for the Pythia, for the Sibyl, or even possibly the prophet, the realization of these oracles, these prophecies, are often accompanied by ecstatic manifestations, all very widely awake, with all the senses seemingly engaged in the pursuit or reception of these spiritual messages. Next image. Iamblichus notes that these seers often need music of some sort to help them enter into these mystical states. He says, so also certain others, he says, of these ecstasies become enthusiastic or inspired when they hear cymbals and drums or some choral chant, as for example, those who are engaged in the Corybantatic rites, those who are possessed at the Sabazian festivals, and those who are celebrating the rites of the Divine Mother, unquote. One thing that a lot of scholars miss is that so much of the surroundings of these oracles there's a music accompaniment. There's also strings sometimes involved, and we see references to this. So it's not completely silent. There's always music filling the halls and caves of these locations. Next image. Another factor noticed by Iamblichus is that the medium is often required to do some activity themselves to enter into this mystic state, whether through meditation, taking drugs, drinking believed magical waters, moving in certain ways, or going to particular places. I'm going to be quoting again from him. He says, others also are inspired when drinking water, like the priest of the Clarion Apollo at Colophon. Others when sitting over cavities in the earth, like the women who deliver oracles at Delphi. Others when affected by vapor from the waters, like the prophetess at Branchidae, which is, of course, at Didyma, and others when standing in indented marks like those who have been filled from an imperceptible inflowing of the divine plurum. Others who understand themselves in other respects become inspired through the fancy, he says, some taking darkness as accessory, others employing certain potions, and others depending on singing and magical figures. Some are affected by means of water, others by gazing on a wall, others by the hyptheral air, and others by the sun or some other of the heavenly luminaries. Isn't this fascinating, right? So there are just many ways, right? But there are many methodologies to reach this state, according to Iamblichus. Next image. Also, the medium author interacts with other objects to enact the oracle using certain tools, practicing special techniques, and observing particular signs. Some have likewise, he says, established the technique of searching the future by means of entrails and birds and stars. Iamblichus says that for the most part, mediums assert that they are providing a service that is exclusive in some manner, that the gods or spirits are working through them because of who they are. And what they are doing is in some way unique. And so the seeker must esteem what they say over their own inclinations, or more humbly, because of their extensive experience as a diviner, they may have some more clarity than we have. He says, what, I ask, is the nature of divination, and what is its particular character? The diviners all say that they arrive at the foreknowledge of the future through gods or daemons, and that it is not possible for others to have any inkling of it, only those who have command over the things that be. But Iamblichus doubts that such divine knowledge was only for the specialized, that it was, that it was through their powers alone that accomplished this connection. And he believes that such practices can be acquired by anyone if they are willing. He says, I dispute, therefore, whether the divine power is brought down to such a subserviency to human beings as, for instance, not to hold aloof from any who are diviners with barley meal, he says, right? Next image. Also, Iamblichus cautions that mediums should not believe they are on their own, have the power to draw down these authorities. For the gods and spirits, they do as they please. He says, in regards, however, to the origins of the oracle art, it is to be doubted whether a god or angel or demon or some other such thing is present at the manifestations, which, of course, the Greek epiphany, right? So he then forwards some possible interpretations. He said some are of the opinion that the soul itself both utters and imagines these things, and that there are similar conditions of it which have produced from little sparks. Others, that there is a certain mingled form of substance produced from our own soul and from the divine in breathing, that we connect to the breathing process. Others, that the soul, through such activities, generates from itself a faculty of imagination in regards to the future. Or else that the emanations from the realm of matter bring daemons into existence through their intent forces, especially when the emanations are derived from animals, he says. So here Iamblichus breaks down a few theories he's heard about for how oracles move something. You notice this, right? First, what we experience as oracles are simply acts of the imagination. Second, that our soul is actually able to mingle with the divine, possibly through the medium of our breathing. Third, that we tap into material emanations from the spirit daemons that mix with our imaginations, but they do have actual results. So the realm of imagination is not it's not simply the idea of make believe. They're just making this up. It's not pretend, right? What happens is these imagizations, connect to these divine archetypes that are emanating from the monad, emanating from the one, and we tap into that through the imaginative process, right? So even though it's not direct, it's indirect, it still bears the pattern, it bears the marker of that which is higher up, imprinted upon our souls. Got it? Following these theories, next image, Iamblichus outlines some theories for how this contact with the divine may happen from his perspective. And so what he does, he says that there are conjectures that are put forth for the following statements. And this is his breakdown. So I'm going to give you a generalization of what he says. A synopsis. And as you will here. Number one, that during sleep, when we're not engaged with anything, we sometimes chance to obtain perceptions of the future. We've established that. Two, that likewise, an evidence that a condition of the soul is a principal source of the art of divining, and that it is shown by facts that the senses are held in check, fumes and invocations being employed for the purpose, and that by no means everybody, but only the more artless and young persons are suitable for that purpose. I think it's kind of interesting that he talks about those who are open, who are young, who are vulnerable, are oftentimes end up being the oracles. Number three, that likewise ecstasy or alienation of the mind is a chief origin of the divining art. Also, that mania, which occurs in diseases, mental aberrations, abstinence from wine, suffusions of the body, fancies set in motion by conditions or whatever it may be, that can lead to this idea of ecstasy. That he supports the idea of a positive aspect of working with the spirits, working with the gods, right? He supports that, but he does not seem to like what he calls technical magic, goetia, or black magic. And so he says that always, when it comes to oracles, when it comes to the divination, it's always from a position of request. It's always a petition. You can never force the gods, the spirits, the ancestors to answer. You have to be vulnerable and open to them. So there is none of this, what he understands as lower arts. Next image. That both the realm, he believes, that of nature, art, and the feeling of things of common throughout the universe all connect together in some way. In fact, that we can connect not only through ourselves, but through stones and herbs and even sacred knots and unloose them, open places that are locked, and change the purpose of individuals by whom they are entertained, right? He also says they also who are able to reproduce the mystic figures are not to be held in low esteem, for they watch the course of the heavenly bodies and tell from the position and relation of one with another whether the oracle pronouncements of the ruling planets will be false or true. So astrology, the movement of the stars, fits into this. But next image. But there are some, however, who suppose there is likewise those who work in a darker sense. Next image. Those especially known as the pagan priests, with open mouths, attempting in many ways to raise our expectations. So he says, but be forewarned. You see, you have people who are truly vulnerable, open, to the spirits, to the gods, to the ancestors, are truly open, and they have nothing to gain from it. But beware of the charlatans. Beware of the begging priests, because they want that for their own sustenance. They want that for their own selfish gain. They want that for their own fame, their own reputation. And so beware of those who are seeking to fleece. And one of the indications of that, from his perspective, are those who demand of the gods for things to happen. And look, it is so. And obviously, this goes into the realm for him as hubris, as pride, as ego, and he will have nothing with that. So this is Iamblichus' definition from going into the third century into the fourth century CE of what our topic's about, oracles. Next image. Okay, so let's just do a quick jump to Mesopotamia. I just want to bring up a few things. Soothsayers and diviners were a fundamental part of Sumerian and Babylonian religion and philosophy. No king would embark on a major undertaking without consulting these men in either war or building a temple. Diviners believed that man, that nature, and that the cosmos have a reciprocal relationship, that the whole universe is conceived as a huge, complex network of sympathetic forces which hold things together, which, by the way, is exactly the same that Iamblichus believes within a Greco-Roman context. Hence, humanity is related to animals, which are related to the elements, which are related to each other. At the same time, there are forces working through the same relationships that go against us. So you do have the sense of a positive and you have the sense of a negative. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Shintoism when it comes to the musubi, when it comes to, how the energy works, right? You have the positive and you have, of course, that which is negative, purification rites and so forth. Diviners believe that they can make deductions about the human condition from omens in nature, whether the stars within plants and in animals. The examination of a sheep's entrails provides an example of their beliefs. And so this right here is a ancient Mesopotamian stone entrail. So by reading, so because all of these forces are all connected together, you can open an animal who's connected to nature, who's connected to the cosmos. And by looking at the entrails, you can read or detect various portents. I guess that's important, right? Literally. Okay, bad joke going on. One example of this is if the entrails, I'm actually reading an inscription from ancient Mesopotamia. If the entrails are burst at the point of entry, a king's son will succeed to the throne. If they are burst at the navel, a madman will rule the land. If the small intestine is burst, a peasant's son will take the throne. Obviously, for these contexts, is again king. They claim to understand man's relationship with nature so well that they can deduce from a human situation precisely what omen the oracle will offer, and of course, use the mitigation of various animals or looking at the stars. Next image. In Egypt, for the Egyptians, the goddess by the name of Wadjet was closely associated with oracles. Now, the name Wadjet means eye of the moon and was often depicted as a snake-headed woman, a woman with two snake heads sometimes, or even a woman with a human head but a snake body. There's a snake in there somehow, slithering about. So it just depends on the scale. In many cases, Wadjet was viewed as the primal snake, who was indeed the Milky Way above, and so connected with the movements of fate thereby. So the snake is the Milky Way. Isn't that a beautiful kind of analogy right there? The official center of her oracle was in the renowned temple of Per Wedget, called by the Greeks Buto. The Greeks identified Wadjet with their own goddess Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis. Some scholars believe that it was the oracle of Wadjet that influenced the Greeks to have their own oracles. That's why we're kind of going down this direction. You'll see more about that in a little bit. And so even the famous archaeologist Evans believed that the Minoan snake goddess was somehow tied to Wadjet. Next image. Rivaled only by Delphi. This was a very important oracle site in the Greco-Roman world. The Oracle of Dodona was far older than Delphi and situated far away from the center of the Greek world in the remote region of Epirus. It's very close to modern-day Albania. This oracle was set beneath the vast shadow of Mount Tmolus. Next image. Aristotle did not believe Dodona was always so isolated from the Greeks, believing that it was around Dodona that the Hellenes first originated, and that they then migrated from here down to the rest of mainland Greece. Archaeology has revealed that the Mycenaeans were here around 1400 BCE. The Illyrians were also early associated with the site. Their artifacts discovered here and were known to consult this oracle along with the northern tribes of the Greeks. Now, but this oracle site was once dedicated to the mother goddess, and specifically often in the form of Gaia, Rhea, or Dione. The later name Dione simply means deity, right? Just a minute here. There's a little pop-up that came up. Simply meaning deity. And so you can see the form of Dios, right? Dios, right? We find from the earliest inscriptions that Dione and Zeus Nios were worshipped here together. Next image. This is a real cool magical amulet connected to Dione. So it's fascinating. This kind of goes back to the ancient Indo-Europeans, right? You know, you have this concept here of going all the way back to Dias Piter, right? Dias Piter, and then it moves down. Dias Piter will become Zeus Pater, Piter, and of course for the Romans will be Jupiter. But it's interesting because we see that early on amongst the Indo-Europeans and with the Mycenaeans that everything had its counterpart. So Zeus as a male had its counterpart of a female. And so you have Zeus, but you also have a feminine version, which is Dione. You would also have a masculine and feminine Poseidon. And so they even had, we found through Linear B tablets, we have found references that there were temples dedicated to the distinct parts, the feminine or the masculine parts. Next image. And look, hey, I just happen to have a picture of the old temple of Dione and at Dodona. Not much left, but the foundation. And I know we're pretty excited about this image. Let's go to the next image. And you know, you got the new temple of Dione and Dodona. So yeah, you got the old one and you got the new one. I guess you're getting my point here, right? So what will happen? Moving on here. So this was originally a mother goddess site, right? But it's also because it's Dione, which is connected to the feminine aspect of Zeus. You could see later on, you're going to have this being focused as patriarchy really takes its toll to simply the male aspect of Zeus, right? So the designation Zeus Naos related to the father of the gods in relation to the naiads, those nymphs that presided over fountains, wells, springs, streams, brooks, and other bodies of fresh water. In this capacity, Zeus was connected to the spring that was located below his sacred oak within the sanctuary. So he is worshipped at Dodona, specifically connected to a sacred spring, as well as a sacred oak. There you go. Next image. So Herodotus relates a myth that he claimed to have heard from the priests of Thebes in Egypt, telling how two priestesses had been carried away from Thebes in Egypt by the Phoenicians. One, they said, they had heard was taken away and sold in Libya. The other in Hellas. These women, they said, were the first founder of places of divination in the aforesaid countries. This is a quote from Herodotus. So you have this idea, hence from this tale, that one gathers that the Egyptians were trying to communicate that the oracles at the oasis at Siwa in Libya and of Dodona in Epirus were founded at the same time, and that the Phoenicians were responsible for bringing them to the respective locations. But also what's happening here is the Egyptians are taking credit for the spread of these kinds of oracles outside of their own realm. And we kind of see that there's a little precedent for this. Now, when Herodotus personally visited Dodona, he was told that the foundation story by one of the priestesses called a Pleiades. By the way, Pleiades means doves. And the story goes, according to Herodotus, where two black doves had come flying from Thebes in Egypt, one to Libya and one to Dodona. The latter settled on an oak tree and there uttered human speech, declaring that a place of divination from Zeus must be made there. The people of Dodona understood that the message was indeed divine and therefore established the oracle shrine located there. The dove which came to Libya told the Libyans, they say, to make an oracle to Ammon. This also is sacred, of course, to Zeus. Ammon Zeus, right? Such was the story told by the Dodanian priestess, the eldest of whom was a certain Prominia, and the next Tamarit, and the youngest Nicandra. I'm obviously reading the primary source here. And the rest of the servants of the temple of Dodona similarly held it true. So you have this idea that, hey, you know what? These oracle sites, they are connected to some form of God that's beyond the gods. For the Egyptians, it's connected to Ammon-Ra, understood by the Greeks in Egypt as Zeus Ammon or Ammon Zeus, but also at Dodona, connected to Dione and Zeus, and then, of course, eventually just Zeus. So there is a evolution. Next image. After hearing these two versions of the story, one from the priest of Thebes in Egypt, which we just heard, and one from the priestesses of Dodona, Herodotus adds his own analysis. He said, he says, my own belief about this is as follows. If the Phoenicians did in fact carry away the sacred women and sell one in Libya and one in Hellas, then in my opinion, the place where this woman was sold in what is now Hellas, but was formerly called Pelasgia, was Thesprotia. And then, being a slave there, she established a shrine of Zeus under an oak that was growing there. For it was reasonable that, as she had been a handmaiden of the temple of Zeus at Thebes, she would remember that temple in the land to which she had come. After this, as soon as she understood the Greek language, she taught divination, and she said that her sister had been sold in Libya by the same Phoenician who sold her. So Herodotus is given his own interpretation. He's trying to blend together these two different accounts, one from Thebes, one from the priest of Dodona, who, of course, he named specifically. The site of Thesprotia was closer along the coast of Dodona, and in Herodotus' mind, more plausibly as a designation for the Phoenicians to drop off their priestess in the area. So he's saying, you would think that it would be closer to the coast. But then again, the Oracle of Siwa is far in the deserts of Egypt by what is now Libya. So, yeah, it's Herodotus. Next image. You can see here the layout is quite a complex, right? That grew around it eventually. So you have a temple and altar of Hercules. We have, of course, the old and the new temples of Dione. We have a stadium there. Of course, you have a temple of Venus, and obviously, it's not mentioned here, a site connected to Zeus. So it grows into this very large complex. But next image. But the Oracle of Dodona was at first in the open air, with the spring and oak the primary focus. In fact, the priests, who are called Siloi, were described as sleeping on the ground with unwashed feet. In the Iliad, the oracle of Dodona could be consulted even from afar. With Achilles praying, he says, "Hi, Zeus, Lord of Dodona, Pelasgian, living afar off, brooding over wintry Dodona," unquote. You find this interesting. So this site is so old that it is quoted from and already well established in the Iliad. And of course, the Iliad, it's obviously sources go way back. Parts of it go back to the Mycenaean era and so forth. But obviously, the Homeric context goes into the 8 and 700s BCE. It was only, however, in the 4th century BC that a small stone temple to Zeus was added. So it was originally simply an open site. Next image. And you can see this is, of course, the general site of the oak. This is, of course, the surrounding enclosure connected to Zeus. So next image. Yeah, I like this one. This is another image that shows, of course, the sacred house of Zeus, and with, of course, the sacred oak. Next image. You can see this reconstruction here of this sacred site. It's interesting because the oak was always connected to Zeus. It's interesting because the oak, in many Indo-European beliefs, is oftentimes connected to the central or most powerful deity. Next image. I like this image. You can get a nice view. It's a beautiful setting. Next image. And you can see here there is for various gatherings, quite a theater is built up. Next image. And here's the entryway. Next image. Just kind of want to take you there. Um, and again, it came to service so many people. Next image. So it's not a isolated place at all. This is the Bouleuterion or council house at Dodona. We're going to see this a lot. These oracle sites always need to have administrators. But what will happen is these sites will attract lots of people from all over the place. You're going to, because everybody wants their part. You're a pilgrimage to this place. Well, hey, you got to have a place to stay. So that means there's got to be accommodations. There's got to be places to gather for various rituals. There's, people need to eat. So there's got to be markets. And so there will always grow up nearby some kind of small town. And because of that, you needed to have a council house or a Bouleuterion to administer what's going on. And sometimes these little villages next to these oracle sites are directly right there, right next to it. In other cases, for example, the Oracle of Claros, you're going to have the main administrative city, which is Notion, which is a few miles away, just to keep that sense of sanctity of the original site. But there's an encroachment here, Dodona. Next image. Okay, right here. And I think it's interesting that you have a temple Aphrodite at Dodona. It makes sense that you have one to Zeus and you have, one going back, to Dione, right? But Aphrodite, and what is the connection there? Well, it's a connection that is through Zeus. If you remember the legends and stories, Aphrodite, how she came about. Anyway, so next image. Okay. Um, Look at this, right? So quite a bit was left. Dodona was only abandoned later on during the Christian era, but because it was so far away from everybody, a lot of it's preserved. It would just decline gradually, and then slowly disappears. Next image. Right here, this again is Temple of Themis. Once again, quite a bit there. Next image. And here, of course, is a sacred house. This is the residence of Zeus, which I think is interesting. So this is the place where the god indwells, where the god arrives, and you can see there's the oak tree that's behind. So we have so it is in a sense like a holy of holies, right? In Judaism, of course, you have this place at the back of the temple where God is believed to be. Well, guess what? This is a house where Zeus was believed to indwell on earth, and this makes it a particularly holy place. And of course, the sacred oak is nearby. Well, at least a later version of it, right? Next image, and this is it from above. And again, you can see the general layout of it, right? Next image. Also, of course, there's a new sacred oak tree at Dodona. And next image, what's interesting is even today, people write down their prayers, in hoping it to be answered. Next image. And of course, these are some of the prayers that are placed down, right? This is an example of that. So I'm going to say a few more words. I just want to look at you a little bit, but I wanted you to have already a clear idea with Dodona. Do you feel like you kind of been there? You kind of know the lay of the land a little bit, right? So around 290 BCE, King Pyrrhus, like a Pyrrhic victory of Epirus, decided to make Dodona into the religious capital of his kingdom. As we saw, lavish construction projects were enacted, especially rebuilding the temple of Zeus that was there. Pyrrhus made Dodona the center of a new festival with various athletic games, musical contests, and drama that was enacted in the theater that you just saw. As for the Oracle Dodona itself, the king constructed a perimeter wall around the spring and holy oak, and a temple was built, a new one to Diana and Hercules too. And unfortunately, invading Aetolians in 219 BCE burned the temple of Zeus by Pyrrhus to the ground, but it was restored again. Augustus Caesar ordered the temple of Zeus to be rebuilt in 31 BCE, and this is the temple that apparently stood the longest. When Pausanias visited Dodona in the 2nd century, the great sacred oak forests were reduced to one single oak. I do find this interesting, is that it was at first not just simply an oak, but it was a oak grove, right? It's a grove. It's a sacred grove. But by the time we get to time of Pausanias in the 2nd century, we just have one oak left. Now, just before his important military campaigns against the Persians in 362 CE, the Emperor Julian, known as the Great or the Apostate, depending on your perspective, consulted the Oracle Dodona. Now, as mentioned, the priestesses of Dodona were called the Pleiades, meaning doves. And this designation may be related to the story of the founding of Dodona via the black dove who proclaimed that this was to be his oracle site while perched upon his sacred oak or oaks. Maybe it was just flipping and flittering from oak to oak. I don't know. With the inspiration from this event carrying over to the names of those designated to speak on behalf of Zeus here. Thus, they were doves like that first black dove carrying on oracle. So they literally call them doves, right? Herodotus has his own particular idea of what the designation means, but he always has his opinion, so we can skip that for now, right? But it's interesting. But I don't want to skip this. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna give Herodotus. Why not? I do like him. One aside. I do read Greek, and and Herodotus is known as the father of history. For others, he's known as the father of lies. Um, the truth lies in between somewhere. But what I do want to say about Herodotus is that what he really just does is that he reports everything. So it's not like he's always intentionally lying, although he does kind of mess up, especially lots of his figures. Okay, he lies sometimes. But what he likes to do is he likes to report all the versions of the story. So he'll say, well, there's this version, there's this version, there's this version, there's this version. And then he comes up with some of his own view. But what I like about him is that we get to hear all the versions. What drives me crazy is Thucydides, who's already decided ahead of time who's the other supposed father of history, decided ahead of time what the right version is. And so he doesn't give us all the different perspectives. He just says it happened this way, happened this way, happened this way. But we miss much of the color, we miss much of the drama, we miss the nuance. And I don't like that. Also, Herodotus is fun to read. It's great Greek. It's playful. If you want to learn Greek and you get to the third level, third year, I highly recommend Herodotus. And the second year, all right. But I won't mention what I had to read the Xenophon, but the second year. But Herodotus, I highly recommend. Thucydides, for me, it's beautiful Greek. It is. It's like Tacitus in the Latin. Latin Tacitus it's a Greek high fluent, but the problem is it's dull for me. I like the information, but it's not as inspired. So let's get into the gossip, right? Or his own perspective. Herodotus has his own particular idea of what this designation means. Doves. He says, I expect that these women were called doves by the people of Dodona because they spoke a strange language. And the people thought it sounded like the cries of birds. I told you it's entertaining, right? Uh, then the women spoke what they could understand, and that is why they say that the doves uttered human speech. As long as she spoke in a foreign tongue, they thought her voice was like the voice of a bird. For how could a dove utter the speech of men? The tale that the dove was black signifies that the women were Egyptian, unquote. So we have to understand that in ancient Egypt, people were of all different colors, shades, and so forth, from dark to light. That's just the reality, right? But other scholars have taken a look at this, and they said something else, which is fascinating for me. And that is that there's a theory. Even Robert Temple comes up with this theory that many of these oracle sites used, wait for it, used carrier pigeons and other such birds to relate messages back and forth to learn all they can about whatever events are going on in the world. You following? Inclusive of what may pertain to the inquiries of one of their seekers. From this network of carrier pigeons, the priest could seem to proclaim certain events with full confidence, as messengers following a victory or defeat in the battle took much longer than the birds, so that they would appear to know the results before they happened, or make better predictions from receiving the information closer to the source. Carrier pigeons were well established means of gaining information already at that time in the ancient world. And according to Pliny the Elder, raising such birds became a hobby with many, stating that he says pigeon fancying is carried to insane length by some people. They build towers on their roofs for these birds and tell stories of how breeding and pedigree of particular birds, for which there is now an old precedent. And so swallows were also used to carry messages according to Pliny. So we know that the Oracle of Didyma housed many birds, as we know this from Philostratus, that even at the vestibule of the Parthenon had special places to receive birds. So we do know that this did happen. As for how the oracles were revealed, accordingly, priestesses and priests entered into the sacred grove and then interpreted the rustling of the oak leaves, to discern what Zeus wished to declare. Apparently, the oracle sound originated from the bronze objects that were hanging from the oak branches and sounded with the wind blowing, similar to a wind chime. Now, all this for me, I find this, if you are of the same mind, I find this extremely interesting and entertaining too, right? So yes, it's not simply the rustling of the leaves, excuse me, of the oak. It is more than that. It is the sound that things are hanging, and the way it sounds provides a message. Also at Dodona, lots were drawn from an urn. A anecdote in the from the geographer Strabo tells how in one consultation was ruined when the urns were upset by the king of Molossia's pet monkey. So perhaps there were two urns from which the priest took respectively the question slips. But in this case, the monkey messed things up, always monkeying around. Got to watch out for those tricksters. Oh boy. Next oracle site. You get ready for this one. Next image. Situated in the remote desert wastes between Egypt and Libya, the oracle of Ammon or Ammon Ra at Siwa closely gauged its antiquity to that of Dodona and Epirus, claiming to be founded by a priestess snatched away from Thebes by the Phoenicians. A necropolis from the 26th dynasty, that's 664 to 525 BCE, was discovered here. We find evidence from around the time period that Greek colonists at Cyrene interacted with this oasis, and specifically the oracle located here. We'll take a look at where this oracle is. The Siwa Oasis. It literally is in the middle of nowhere. It's right on the border there with Egypt. Next image. According to Herodotus, the image within the oracle temple of Ammon, known by the Greeks as Zeus Ammon, the image of the deity was in the form of a ram. Next image. Just want to pause for a moment and give you kind of a view of this. Oh, I mean, there's literally just desert everywhere, and all of a sudden, there's this grove of palms, and these ancient ruins are standing out there. Now, the tower you see on the left, that's actually a later minaret from a mosque. But on the right, you see the temple site, and you see that there's a cliff there, and so the temple complex is quite long, but unfortunately, it's falling off the cliff to the right there. You can see there's another major site off to the upper right-hand side. Next image. There's a view of the mosque, but you have to climb up through this windy dirt route to get to the top. So it kind of winds back and forth amongst the ruins. The Acropolis itself is abandoned, but there is a thriving village below. Next image. And so you enter into these gates here. This is the entranceway to the temple itself of Ammon, the great oracle site. Next image. Okay. According to Herodotus, the image within the oracle temple, as I said, of Ammon, known by the Greeks as Zeus Ammon, the image of the deity was in the form of a ram. Yet Quintus Curtius and Diodorus reports that the original form of the oracle was a vizsla of a ring. But this is another version, and of course, this is a Zeus Ammon when you see the ram's horns there. But let's go to the next image. And you can see here's a ring version right here. Sometimes we see these Siwa emeralds with these carvings of Amun Zeus. And look, this is one right there. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, look at the work. And obviously, it was more pure at that time, but I'm pretty impressed. Next image. When Cambyses II, the son of Cyrus the Great, took over Egypt, he sought to destroy the oracle of Ammon. But when he sent out his army of 50,000 men to fulfill his wishes to destroy this ancient oracle, they simply disappeared, lost somewhere in the vast outreaches of the Western desert, and they were never heard from again. So it's really ominous, right? So it's like, wow. I mean, 50,000 gone, right? Pliny tells us that this was because the sacred stone at the temple was touched by sacrilegious hands, which caused a dreaded sandstorm to rage. So maybe they reached the site, but because of what they did, they never were able to return again, right? Next image. So when Alexander the Great was about to embark on his Persian campaign, he caught sight of a bird that led him across the desert to this oasis so that he would consult this oracle about his fate. Here, Zeus Ammon declared to Alexander the Great that Philip was not his father, but that he was actually the son of Zeus, making him half divine, and so fitting well the profile as a hero that is ushering in the golden age. So you basically, he goes into this temple, which you just saw. We'll see more of it in a little bit. Basically, Zeus says, Philip is not your father. I am your father. Maybe not so Darth Vader sounding, but you get the idea, right? And so he's like, oh wow, I'm half God. I'm a hero. And so from there on out, he saw himself as the new Achilles, reborn again, right? Arian of Nicomedia writes as following concerning Alexander's trip to the Oracle of Ammon. He says, at this point, Alexander was seized with a longing to visit Ammon in Libya. His intention was to consult the god, as the Oracle of Ammon was reputed to be truthful. And it was said that Perseus and Hercules had consulted it. Alexander wanted to rival Perseus and Hercules since he was descended from them both, and was also seeking to trace his birth back to Ammon, just as mythology traces that of Hercules and Perseus to Zeus. He therefore set out for Ammon in this frame of mind, and with the intention of finding out more exactly about his origins, or of claiming he had found one. I like that Arian writes that he's all well, he wants to find out about his origins, or at least make the trip and claim that he found out, right? He's kind of so the journey along the journey, excuse me, along the coast as far as Plutonium was through deserted, though not waterless country for a distance of 280 kilometers, according to Aristobulus. From there, he turned inland, where the oracle of Ammon was to be found. The road, next image, is deserted, sandy for the most part, and without water. But Alexander had the benefit of heavy rains, and he ascribed this to the divinity. Another occurrence was attributed to divine intervention. Whenever a south wind blows in that country, much of the road is covered with sand, and the road marks disappear. One is in an ocean of sand, as it were, and it is impossible to tell one's direction, as there are no mountains or trees or solid hills to serve as signs and guides the traveler on their way, just as sailors go by the stars. Hence, Alexander's army was advancing aimlessly, and the guides could not tell where to go, they could not tell the way. So it looks like he's not going to make it. He's going to be like that the 50,000 that disappeared, right? Ptolemy's son Alargus relates that two speaking snakes, you heard me, right? Ptolemy's son Alargus relates that two speaking snakes preceded the army, and Alexander ordered the guides to follow them and trust in the divinity. The snakes then led the way to the oracle and back again. You know, I want to have a guiding snake, right? So here in this trackless desert, these snakes led him on the way. But Aristobulus says, and most writers agree with him, that two crows flew in front of the army and served as guides to Alexander. So we got crows or snakes. I can assert there must have been some divine intervention to help Alexander because this is what seems probable. The area where the sanctuary of Ammon is situated is circular in shape. It is completely deserted, covered with sand and waterless, but the site itself is small. It's full of garden trees, olives, and palms, and it is the only part of the area that catch the dew. And I think it's interesting that it looks the same as it did 2,300 years ago. Next image. There's Alexander's cartouche, by the way, when he found out, of course, the whole thing. Next image. Okay. Hannibal, by way of Carthage, was known to consult the Oracle of Ammon, but by the time we get to the first century, the influence of the sacred site did begin to decline. Cato came to the Oracle to ask about the possibility of freedom of Rome, but the Oracle refused to answer. Another story has it that Cato came to the Oracle and refused to speak to it in an attempt to break its prestige and power. That would be something that he would do. Now, while the ruins of the temple of the Oracle still exist, the rock upon which it sits is visibly cracking, next image, and eroding away. Oh, this is great. This is like always have a little village. Here's a little village that's supporting uh, supporting tourists and others who come to visit. But you can see clearly the village, the establishment on the behind on the hill is falling into ruin. So this is the village. This village, by the way, has been abandoned since 1926. It follows a very violent and heavy rainstorm. Next image. The Oracle site is reached by climbing a path up the side of the rock where it continues, which, by the way, continues to stand. One gets access to this path via the gate of this abandoned village with, next image, with ruins of an old mosque that stands over the entrance. Its minaret continued to stand with an ancient well before it with several niches leading to subterranean passages. Next image. And you can see a good view of it there. The Oracle Temple itself, next image, is located in the northwest corner of this rock. Next image. With this wall directly against the cliff. You can see there's a cliff behind. That's not good. You can see it's definitely eroding, right? The outline of the forecourt where the processions of the gods once assembled can still be made out with the northern eastern wall still standing. Next image. Entering through the grand facade, two large halls follow. Next image with the sanctuary after that. Its entrance open along the main axis. The first hall measures 7.74 by 4.95 meters with two niches located on the southern wall, one in each of the two corners. Furthermore, an entrance to the crypt is located here. Almost the same size as the first court. The second court is slightly elevated. Next image, you can see the elevation right there. Here's what it looked like. So we just saw the forecourt, you can see there, and we're moving into, there's the second court right there, which is still there. And then there's that third part behind, which is, it's not doing as well. So next, there are three entrances in the north wall of the second court, of which the middle and larger one leads to the sanctuary. The small entrance to the right of it, only 80 centimeters wide, leads to a narrow corridor that might have been used as an annex for storing the temple equipment or to assist in delivering the oracles. In the left wall of the corridor, there are 3 niches about 66 centimeters high, higher than the floor. And near the ceiling are 2 apertures for light. Now, next image. There we go. There's a nice image of what it looked like. You're going to have you're gonna see at the entrance there is a figure of King Amisis, whose reign the temple was built and decorated, with his head and body having been chiseled out. So there's not much left. The crown of the north upon the head was left intact, but there's nothing else. The king's name is still there in his cartouche, but that's about it. He offers rounded vases of wine to 8 deities who stand facing him in a row. And let's go to the next images. So here we go. So this is interesting. I love this. This is, of course, an image of a stele of depicting Alexander the Great as Pharaoh offering wine to the sacred bull. Next image. I just want to give you a mark of him. This is deified Alexander. Hey, look at the horns there, right? Once again, the attribution to what happened at Siwa, where he is the son of Zeus Ammon. Next image. There we go. We're getting the entranceway again. We're going in now. You can see, of course, there was some marble facing there or something. Next image. Yeah. We get to the last part, the last chamber. Yeah, it's not doing as well. Next image. You can see it's clearly tumbling, but you do see a remnant of some images here. Next image. This will be the last one for this group here. So here we go. They're represented on the east wall. Not much. Other gods on the wall include Ammon's consort, Amanir, Mut, Kansu, and Mahisa. And of course, there's also a inscription. I give life to the chief of the desert dwellers, Sutit Iridis. But you can see that it is definitely crumbling away. We are fast losing this temple. The sad part is, let's take a look at me for a few moments. The sad part is nobody's doing anything about it. There needs to be people out there to want to preserve it. And even though local tourism, they're happy about the place. I mean, there's some little revenue for those who live out there. There's that last wall is going to fall soon. It's just a matter of time and erosion. And I'm hoping you can see they have tried to sustain it, to make it stronger. But it is quickly going. I think there needs to be more awareness of this site so that, and more money and more revenue coming in. Okay. Next, Oracle. The Oracle, of course, of Apollo at Delphi. So next image. All right. Without doubt, the Oracle of Delphi was the most famous of all the ancient oracle centers in the Greco-Roman world. It was located at the edge of Mount Parnassus, that famous edifice that many Greeks believe Deucalion, who's the Greek version of Noah, landed his ark following the Great Flood. Next image. The name Delphi derives from the root Delphis, meaning womb, relating to the early Gaia worship connected to this site. So just like Dodona, originally it was dedicated to a female deity. Asclepius, in his Eumenides, asserts that Delphi was dedicated to the earth goddess Gaia before Apollo took over the site. Yet, according to the Homeric hymns to Delphic Apollo, the original name for Delphi was Chrysa. Greek legend tells how, next image. Oh, there's Mount Parnassus. We'll kind of hold there for a little bit. Greek legend tells how Zeus, determined to find the center of his grandmother Earth, Gaia or Gaia, sent 2 eagles flying from the east and western extremities. Next image. There's the 2 eagles. In the end, so Zeus sent 1 eagle out one direction, 1 eagle out the other direction, the sea, the east and west, to see where they would meet. In the end, the path of the eagles crossed over Delphi, and so here was believed to be the center of the earth. Here was Gaia, and so this is a representation. You'll see or another image of it in the stone that represents where this was happened in a museum. We'll see that a little bit. So, in dedication to this achievement, Zeus established that this was the omphalos, or the navel of Gaia. This is the navel of the earth. A mid-5th century BCE plate from Boeotia, now in the National Museum of Athens, preserves an image of such an omphalos stone. Let's go to the next image with representations of an earth goddess sitting before it, crowned with a polis upon her head. The goddess holds in her hand poppy heads, ears of wheat, and a flaming torch, just so there's left little doubt that this image is connected to an oracle site. A dove flies directly overhead and back. Next image. So you do have these. So this is a navel, this omphalos stone. Next image. Pretty impressive, right? Next image. I think I want to pause right there. For a few earlier stories, about this, or just stories, judging from the evidence, strictly from literary evidence, that such was the prestige of this site that after 500 BCE, you have this idea. They said that Gaia, or Earth, and her daughter Themis had spoken oracles at Pytho. Such has been the strength of the tradition that many historians and others have accepted as historical fact the ancient statement that Gaia and Themis spoke oracles before it became Apollo's establishment. Well, Joseph Fontaine-Rose, he says, yet nothing but the myth supports his statement. He says, this is all stories. In the earliest account, he says, that we have of the Delphic oracles beginning, the story found in the Homeric hymn to Apollo, there was no oracle before Apollo came and killed the great she-dragon Pytho, who happened to be the only inhabitants there. This is apparently, he says, the Delphic myth of the 6th century. So he says this story comes later on. Next image. So you have this idea that, this is a later story. Next image. There we go. Herbert William Park disagrees with Joseph Fontaine-Rose, who all too easily dismisses the content of these myths that do indeed indicate an earlier association with Gaia. Just because the source dates earlier doesn't mean it's the earliest version of the story. This is a problem that some scholars have. They go, well, this is the first one we have, and so it shows that this is only Apollo was first, and this story comes later. But the problem is that there's always earlier possible sources that have been lost that later sources are recording. And so these later sources are actually recording earlier sources than the ones that we have extant. So he says, with this said, Park admits that the literary evidence can be confusing. But he says the foundation of Delphi and its oracle took place before the times of recorded history. It would be foolish to look for a clear statement of origin from an ancient authority, but one might hope for a plain account of the primitive traditions. Actually, this is not what we find. The foundation of the oracle is described by 3 early writers: the author of the Homeric hymn to Apollo, Asclepius in the prologue of his Eumenides, and Euripides in the chorus of his Epiphania in Taurus. All 3 versions, instead of being simple and traditional, are already selective and tendentious. I love that word. They disagree with each other basically, but have been superficially combined in the conventional version of late classical times. With that said, he said this version, Euripides' version, evidently reproduces in a sophisticated form the primitive tradition, which Asclepius, for his own purpose, has been at pains to contradict. So that there is an earlier, the Gaia version is the earliest version. Next image. And of course, they will, right? Park also discovers other interesting aspects in these ancient stories. He says another very archaic feature at Delphi also confirms the ancient association of the place with the earth goddess. This is, of course, the omphalos, an egg-shaped stone which was situated in the innermost sanctuary of the temple in historical times. Classical legend asserted that it marked the navel, omphalos, or the center of the earth, and explained that this spot was determined by Zeus, who had released two eagles. So Delphi was originally devoted to the worship of the earth goddess and he goes on. And so the idea is the very evidence in the image itself harkens back to an earlier idea. Next image. And of course, this is a representation then of going to Gaia. So we have these images of Gaia. So originally it is the earth goddess. This is the navel. Next image. And there she is again, right? Next image. And I love this. This is the image, of course. The story, of course, now is that Zeus comes and he fights the Typhon, right? He slays the serpent. But of course, one thing we were missing, and that is, remember, Pytho, the Python, is the son of Gaia. Hello. And so, of course, it's natural to go, well, why is this Python? Why is he there? Right? So, and why, according to all the stories, this Python is guarding this site? Because it already is holy to Mom, right? Because of this act, Apollo had to atone, because of course, he killed the Python. Apollo had to atone for his accidental murder of Gaia's son and was forced to spend the next 8 years in menial service to be purified from his act. Later, an annual festival known as the Septerla recreated this story, including his slaying of the serpent, his flight, his atonement, and return of his divine powers, because he lost them. Next image. Okay, so we go here, and the Oracle of Delphi moved through one designated symbol or priestess known as the Pythia. Right after, the pipe. You got the idea. This sacred vessel of Apollo was required to be an older woman living a pure life and selected from the peasants of the surrounding area about Delphi. The Pythia sat on a tripod seat positioned over an opening in the earth. According to the local legend, after Apollo slew the Python, its body fell into this fissure opening. So once again, according to local legend, right? So Apollo slays the Python. Its body then falls into this fissure, this opening deep down below. Here, the body of the Python, as it decomposed, was believed to turn into the fumes that arose and so reached the Pythia so she could breathe it in, giving her the ability to communicate with Apollo. It is interesting to note that the word Python in itself is derived from the Greek word pytherin, which does mean to rot. Right? Next image. As the Pythia took in the vapors, she would enter into a trance, becoming possessed by Apollo, and so then prophesy. Scientists have found traces of a gas coming from this fissure. And so this is often viewed as aiding in these ecstatic trances. So there is something actually going on here. Furthermore, the Pythia probably also drank the water from the springs of Cassotus. For while Pausanias was visiting Delphi, he was told that the waters of the spring ran underground into the Adyton, energizing the Pythia with magic powers. So it's not just the fumes. She drank the water. Next image. Now, While the Pythia raved, her words were translated by the nearby priests of the temple into elegant hexameters. So she's going into this trance. And as for some of the recorded oracles, there are many recorded in ancient times. All openings of the oracle began with as follows. They all said, God has ordained. Plutarch states that there are two basic kinds of questions asked of the Oracle of Delphi, and this pertains to other oracles as well. First, there were questions involving life itself, which Apollo could answer easily. Second, there were questions connected to the power of reasons, where the response would not be so simple, for these mysteries had to be carefully discerned on the part of the seeker. As a result, all Apollo could do is provide an answer that would give clues to its possible answer, enough hopefully to keep the seeker looking for this truth. So there are answers that come immediately. They're very clear. Boom. This is yes, no, do it, don't do it. But then you get those that are just kind of like, oh, it's a labyrinth to try to decipher exactly what is it meant. And the very mystery of itself is important to puzzle out. That the gods, the goddesses, they don't want you to figure things out easily. They want you to work for it because that in and of itself is part of the divine will. Next image. An example of one of these oracles was when the Athenians wished to lease land in the Eleusinian sacred territory. They wanted to lease this land for strictly cultivation. They knew they had to ask permission from the god to do so. So they went to the Delphic oracle and handed the Pythia two urns, one with a request for the lease to be approved, and the other with a request for the lease to be disapproved. The Pythia was to point out which urn held the will of Apollo. The Pythia pointed to the urn that had the disapproving request, and so the Athenians had to leave the land sacred to Demeter alone. So they wanted to encroach upon the lands of Demeter, but that just simply was not going to happen. Next image. The city of Helios, seen here, asked what they were to do with a snake that had accidentally was actually brought in a wagon with a sick man from the temple of Asclepius at Epidaurus to their polis, to the city. So here it is, there's this wagon bringing back this sick man from the temple of Asclepius at Epidaurus, and there happens to be a snake in the wagon. What do we do with the snake? Should they send the snake back or let it run free in Helios? For it did indeed heal the sick man, according to the story. The oracle of Delphi instructed that not only should the snake stay at Helios, but that a sanctuary dedicated to Asclepius should be built in the city in honor of this event. Next image. Then there was the case of a certain priest from Phocis by the name of Heracles. His epithet, by the way, his name is Heracles Misogynos, which means woman hater, who violated his oath of celibacy after he got too drunk having intercourse with a woman. Heracles asked if he can be forgiven for breaking his oath, with a response from Delphi that the gods can forgive all uncontrollable acts. So he can violate his vow of chastity. Next image. It's okay. It's all right. Oh, of course, you can see this is kind of not as clear. Next image. Oh, yeah. Of course, the Oracle of Delphi was not always clear, as we talked about. To King Croesus, as he inquired about the Persians at the front door of his kingdom. So King Croesus, richest Croesus, he's considered the richest man in the world. He used to richest Croesus. He was king of Lydia, which is in Anatolia, Western Anatolia. He had a large empire, but the Persians were now arriving, and they're at his front door, and he says, "What should I do?" And the oracle said, "If you cross the river, a great empire will be destroyed." He took this as a favorable omen. And Croesus did indeed cross the river, and a great empire did indeed fall. His own. Oh, no. Another ambiguous oracle was meted out concerning the military campaign. Listen to this oracle, okay? Concerning this military campaign. You will go and you will return. Never in war will you perish. Now, the problem is you will go, you will return, never in war will you perish. It's interesting because in Greek it does work the same way. So the question is, there's no comma, right? Absent. So it can be placed in either before or after the word never, covering both possibilities. So you will go and you will return, comma, right? Even though there's no commas in ancient times, right? And then it goes, never in war will you perish. Or it can go, you will go, you will return. And then, of course, you will turn never. In war, you will perish. So you have, goes both ways. Sorry, I'm just going to swallow in here. Got a drink of water here. Next image. Yeah, there we go. The Oracle of Delphi also declared that there was no man wiser than the Athenian philosopher Socrates. Socrates responded that if this was so, it was because he alone was aware of his own ignorance. There's no man wiser than me because I do realize I know nothing. Encouraged by the Pythia's pronouncement, Socrates further dedicated himself to the search for knowledge, saying that she was, quote, an essential guide to personal and state development, unquote. Of course, not all men believed in the Oracle of Delphi, even some pagans, with the next image. With Origen of Alexandria responding to Celsus concerning the Christians' lack of belief in oracles. But it turned out that it wasn't only those who are the Christians who questioned the Oracle of Delphi. It was those who were the Aristotelians, the Peripatetic school. They really questioned if this was true at all. And this image right here, another school that did not believe in the Oracle of Delphi were the Epicureans. Not at all, So there were certain groups within ancient Greece in philosophical circles that did not believe in these oracles. Next image. Every 4 years, beginning in 586 BC, the Pythian Games were celebrated at Delphi. Those victorious at the Pythian Games were presented with a laurel crown. A boy playing the infant Apollo reenacted the slaying of the python, and so ceremonial cut this laurel crown from a tree. And for why the laurel leaf was sacred to Apollo, a legend told how when he walked to Delphi from the north, he stopped at Tepe in the region of Thessaly and picked a laurel from a bay tree and considered it as sacred. But now the Temple of Apollo, the extent of it, I'm just throwing water on myself. If you want to know what just happened. Ooh, that feels good. Quick refreshment. So there is a succession of temples, dedicated to temples said to be located here. Next image. Here it is. That's great. I love this. This is good. Okay, so the story goes as follows, that according to local tradition, there was supposed to be 4 temples that preceded, the Temple of Apollo from the 6th century. The first temple was supposedly constructed of olive branches that were brought from a place called Tempe. The second temple was said to be made I love this one. The second temple was said to be made by bees directly from their wax and also included their own wings. So, how they did this is none of your beeswax, or maybe it's a lot of your beeswax. But this bee temple did not stand very long. So, to be or not to be was always the question. So, for one day, a mighty wind blew it away to the land of the Hyperboreans. So, there it goes, you know. Ah, that must have stung, right? The third temple was directly made by Athena and Hephaestus. It was quite beautiful. It included rows of siren reliefs, so it has reliefs of sirens, as in siren calls, right? But magically, these enchantresses sang, and the gods had to bury the temple below the earth. Pindar writes, Muses, what was its fashion, shown by the skill in all arts of the land of Hephaestus and Athena? Of bronze the walls, and of bronze stood the pillars beneath. But of gold were the 6 enchantresses who sang above the eagle. But the sons of Cronos opened the earth with a thunderbolt and hid the holiest of all things made. They were angry at the sweet voice because strangers perished away with their children and wives when they hung their lives on the honey-hearted words. You thought sirens were bad in the ocean, drawing you against the rocks. Can you imagine here? I guess what will happen is maybe you fling yourself out the mountain, perhaps, right? So there goes that. Trophonius and Archimedes constructed the fourth temple from stone, and it was destroyed by fire in around 548 BCE. As for the fifth temple, we know that this 6th century temple was called the Temple of Alchemidae, named after the family who financed the structure after the previous one burned. And I think that's, once again, hey, you know what? Why not name the temple after the patron? It was a Doric hexastyle temple with 6 by 15 columns in outline. An earthquake then destroyed this temple in 373, and so the present building was then built here. Next image. There we are. Um, the temple, Apollo followed a peripateral design with Doric columns all around and retained the ratio of 6 by 15 column pattern. In the middle was an adyton, or kind of a holy of holies. This is where the Delphic oracle, where the Pythia was situated. Carved into this temple was the famous maxim, which is, of course, know thyself. Next image. And so you get an idea of what it looked like. This is where the Pythia entered into her trances and was able to discern your fate. Next image. Oh, this is great. So you can see kind of the complex around it. You can see the supportive areas. Next image. But the temple, but Strabo writes that the whole of Parnassus is esteemed as sacred, which is around the Oracle of Delphi, since it has caves and other places that are held in honor and deemed holy. And what's interesting is there's oracle connections even with this ancient mountain. Once again, we're thinking, hey, this goes back and harkens to Gaia, Mother Earth, right? Of course, the nymph. Actually, there's a few stories. Actually, skip that one. This mountain right here. There was, of course, this belief that Deucalion. The story, of course, goes is that Zeus, he visits the earth. He visits the house of Lycon, and out of lack of hospitality, Lycon tricks Zeus into eating human flesh. He's pretty upset by this, as you can understand. And just like you see in the Bible, I guess we're going to destroy the earth. So he decides to destroy the earth by a great flood. Uh, it's interesting, of course, Mesopotamian civilization has a flood story, but humanity is to be destroyed by flood because we're just plain too noisy. We keep the gods awake. But in this case, right, I can understand because, Zeus is not happy about eating human flesh. So So what he does is he finds a righteous man and a righteous woman. Deucalion as a righteous man, Pythia as the righteous woman, and they're told to build like an ark. And it does the world. There's a great flood. Everything's covered by water, and they reach the top of this mountain. According to one version, of course, there's other mountains that also claim to be a place where Deucalion sits down. And when they arrive, they are given an oracle. It said the oracle of Themis, according to the story, but it's an oracle nevertheless. So this would be the location, according to local belief, of the first oracle in the post alluvial world. It happened right here on this mountain. And it said, well, because we had to repopulate humanity. So, how do we do this? This is where it gets interesting. What happens is the oracle says that you take the bones of your mother and you throw it over your shoulder in order to repopulate the earth. Well, immediately, Deucalion realizes that the bones are are of course of the earth. That's Mother Gaia, right? So what happens is, so we realize the bones of Gaia would be rocks, right? So what he does is that the bones of Gaia would be rocks. So he throws the rocks over his shoulder, and those rocks turn into the first men. And Fira, his wife, throws rocks over her shoulder, and they become the first women. And this is why you shouldn't throw rocks. You just kind of create people. So the long and the short of it is that this is an oracle site, the first oracle site after the flood. And so beyond, most people don't know this. We're kind of bleeding into areas that scholars know about, but most of those in the general public do not know about. That's why it gets fun here, right? Is that obviously this is the bones of your mother, who is Gaia. Guess what? It's another Gaia site, right? So you got a Gaia site. This mountain's connected to a Gaia tradition of repopulating the earth. And of course, then you have the Pythia, which of course is the son of Gaia, who's protecting this site. Maybe the Python, maybe is protecting Delphi per se, or maybe it's protecting this whole region, including the mountains. See how cool? And you can see why this is understood also as the navel of the earth, also connected to the stories of the great mother Gaia. So I just love how everything converges, the convergence of evidence, but most people don't know this. Going on, next image. Here's an image you can see right here. Deucalion is on the right. He's picking up a rock, and it looks like Pythia, his wife, is already not only throwing, she's already throwing the rock. I think he threw the rock earlier because it looks like there's kind of two little babies there on the left-hand side. Do you see it? Just make sure that when you throw these rocks, you don't smash these kids' heads. I mean, I'm kind of worried about that one. A little bit vulnerable, but next image. So, God, good grief. Okay, so it turns out that there are sacred caves, and these caves are connected to oracles in this area, right? So again, so Pausanias talks about these caves that are in this area. So he says also connects to that these caves are connected to various nymphs. In fact, this particular cave was sacred to nymphs known as the Therae, three virginal sisters known as the Melanae, or the Black, Cleodora, famed for her gifts, and Daphne, known as Laurel. Poseidon actually fell in love with Cleodora, and together they produced Parnassus, according to Pausanias. Pausanias describes this cave as follows. In the way from Delphi to the summit of Parnassus, about 60 stades distant from Delphi, there's a bronze image. The ascent to the Corsian cave is easier for an active walker than it is for mules and horses. I mentioned a little earlier in my narrative that this cave was named after a nymph called Corycia. And of all the caves I have ever seen, this seemed to me to be worth seeing. What I love about Pausanias. He's writing in the second century, first and second century CE, and he's just like this travel guide. He sounds just like, and then you walk this way, you look here to the left, you look here to the right. I love it. I love it. So he's kind of telling you to go to this particular cave. And he says the roof stands at a sufficient height from the floor, and water rising apart from springs, but still more dripping from the roof, has made it more clearly visible. And he goes on and on. This cave has been occupied, next image, since the Neolithic age. And many artifacts have been found here. Next image. But what has been found, you can see it's still being used for rituals today. It turns out, more significantly, they have found 24,000 astrogoli, what's also known as astragalus. What's that? Knuckle bones. They're uncovered within this cave. 24,000. What are these knuckle bones used for? Oracles. Right? Oracles, prophecy. It's you do it yourself. I think it's certainly lovely that you can go and listen officially to the Pythia, or you go nearby to this cave, and you could do it yourself. But being in the cave itself, being within this sacred mountain, this mountain of oracles, right, gives it certain powers to make it real. Next image. Again, we're looking at 24,000 of these found in this cave. That's a lot, right? So you can't say it doesn't mean anything. A lot of scholars, doesn't mean it means everything. And so these knuckle bones, next image, such means of divination were very popular throughout Greece and Asia Minor. The four dice known as astragalus is typically the ankle bone from goats or sheep and has been used in games of chance and skill since around 3,500 BCE. When thrown into the air, they land on one of four sides face up, sometimes referred to as camel, goat, horse, and sheep, sometimes as trios, tetros, monos, hexus, sometimes as supinum, pronum, pianum, tortfulum, right? So these irregularities of each bone add to the unpredictable nature for the throw. By the Greco-Roman period, 5 die were then added. Five, it was went from 4 to 5. And of course, each with 4 possible chances. So there you have it. And so you just kind of throw it and you see what the fortune is. Now let's go to the next image. Well, this is far away. This is a place called Termissus. This is in the southern part of Asia Minor, in a place known as Pisidia, which is nearby Pamphylia. I love this. This is one of my favorite cities to visit. It's on the top of a mountain and overlooks the almost purple ocean below. But we have discovered at Termissus various dice oracles, and so this is connected to the knuckle bones that I'm talking about. So what you do is you roll the dice, and as a result, you can get a combination. Now, by this point, you have five. You roll with 5. So I'm going to give you, just for fun, I'm going to read some of these. So if you're rolling this knuckle bone, and let's just say you roll and you get all ones, because in this case, their combination is each knuckle bone is connected, to, of course, yeah. Anyway, we have one, two, three, and four, right? So what will happen is that 1, 1, 1, 1 adds up to five. That means you have rolled Zeus Olympus, and your fortune is if you see only Cheons, Zeus will give good thinking to your mind, stranger. He will grant happiness to your work, for which you will give thanks, but appease Aphrodite and the son of Maya. So next image. This is the site, by the way. These dice oracles uh, at Termissus and other places throughout that have been preserved throughout southern Anatolia are literally written on these walls. I saw many of these myself. Some of these are my photos. Some of these are not because when I was there, I could barely read some of them, and they were hard to find. I'll give credit to those who got a better picture of it than I did. I've been to Termissus, however, on I was it two or three different occasions. So if you roll, for example, 4, 1, 1, 1, you get the Morai. Don't do the business that you're engaged in. It will not turn out well. It will be difficult and impossible around someone who tires himself out. But if you go abroad for some time, no harm will come from it. You have another one. I'm just at random here. You have one that's for victory. That's 3, 3, 1, 1. Next image. It says, you will win, you will take what you wish, and you will achieve everything. The daemon will make you honored, and you will overcome your enemies, and plan that you are about to realize will be according to your desire. Right here is Daniel C. Browning Jr.'s picture. His main entry gate at Termissus and Lycia. It's actually, it's supposed to be Pisidia. Remains of a dice oracle are integrated into the end of the wall at the left. You can see it's hard to read. Next image. But you could kind of make it out. I know it's hard to read. Next image. But can you see it? It's kind of washing away. Yeah. Next image. Okay, we'll take that down for a second. So we have these dice oracles. Of course, for me, I find this as very interesting. I have quite a few of them. I'm not going to read them all, but I just want to read. There's these dice oracles, these various roles, and by these roles, we're not just for southern Anatolia. This this is these roles were understood or memorized by those who were around the Oracle Delphi at the mountain within that cave. So each role has a meaning, it has a combination, and then you either have it memorized or it's written somewhere. And in the case of these sites in southern Anatolia, southern Asia Minor, they're literally written on the wall so people can remember. And sometimes just the exterior wall just kind of scratched on there. So you have, I won't read them, but I'll just tell you some of the categories. You have one for the Zeus's eagle, carrying fortune, victory, joyful victory. One connected to Asclepius, steering Tyche, Aphrodite, Zeus and Athena. We have one connected to the seasons, role. The god does not allow the plan that you followed, thus wait. It is terrible to walk into competition and a trial, so don't do it, right? Or of course, Poseidon, right? The god announces, you kick against the goad, you struggle against the waves, you search for a fish in the sea. Do not hasten to do business. It does not help you to force the gods at the wrong time. You have 61133 adds up to 14 in this particular version here. And what happens is do not project uh, do not project terrible things, and do not pray for what is against the gods, thinking terrible thoughts. There will accrue no gain from it, and no reward will come from this path you are walking. Yeah, I like this Agathos Daemon one. It says, the daemon will lead you on the way that you undertake, and the lover of smiling, Aphrodite, will lead you towards good things, and you will return with rich fruit and untroubled fate. You have Zeus Savior, You have Zeus Ammon, Tyche the Savior, Zeus of hosts, Heracles, Ares. I mean, we have all these fun, interesting combinations. Kronos, Isis the Savior, Hermes the Savior, Serapis, Revenge, Zeus the Lightning. Ha! A good time, you know. 63333. Do not make haste. The daemon is opposed to you. Rather wait and do not act like a dog that gives birth to a blind litter. Take counsel calmly, and things will turn out happily for you. You know, things for good hope, victory, the moon, and so forth. Helios, bringer of light. It goes on and on and on. But actually, these are quite a few pages. Kronos, oh, I love Kronos, the child eater. I happen to be reading more of the negative ones, so I'm trying to keep them happy. Uh, Square, Hermes, and so forth. So there you have it. Okay, so that is the Oracle of Delphi. Let's go to the Oracle of Apollo at Claros. Next image. You can see here, right here, Claros, right? At the top, keep on going. Next image. This is your Ephesus. So at one time, Claros was by a by an open bay there. You could see in this case, you got Claros, which is the oracle site, but the city that is governing it sometimes is Colophon, and other times it's Notion. See there on the very below, you see Notion. And so what happens is that as you can see that in earlier times, you could just sail up to Claros directly. Next image. But as time goes on, right, there's silting. And so as a result, it makes more sense to leave your ship at Notion and then from there travel on to Claros. So the administrative town for this site is Notion, and then of course obviously Claros can just focus in on doing their job. Located in the territory of Colophon, one of the 12 Ionian cities, the site of the Oracle Claros was an elaborate layout intended to accommodate the demand of many pilgrims desiring to hear their possible fate. This oracle was dedicated to Apollo, with a temple dedicated to him here as Apollo Clarios, while the Oracle of Delphi and Dodona were popular with Greeks and have early roots as prophetic sacred sites amongst them. The Oracle of Delphi appealed more to cities more outside the orbit of mainland Greece, and often with non-Greek backgrounds in the background in the beginning. And then, of course, this in turn went to the Claros as well. So it's much like Delphi in that sense. Next image. With this said, the Homeric hymns mention the importance of the Oracle of Claros, which were produced between the 6th and 7th, or actually 7th to 6th centuries BCE. According to legend, the founding story of Claros began when those known as the Epigoni invaded the city of Thebes, taking with them many captives, including the famed seer Tiresias and his daughter Manto. I love this image right here. You can see this is the region where the bay had silted up. Next image. Oh, this is the Clarion Temple from above. Oh, I like this. That's great. You can see you're going to have a watery labyrinth, which you'll see in a little bit more. Next image. That's great. There we go. This is right. This is Monto, right? So the Epigoni then decide to send both. So the story goes, I'll read it again, sorry. According to legend, the founding story of Claros began when those known as the Epigoni invaded the city of Thebes, taking with them many captives, including the famed seer Tiresias and his daughter Manto, seen right here, who was also a noted seer. The Epigoni then decided to send both Tiresias and Manto to the Oracle of Delphi to ask Apollo what they should do next. While Tiresias died on the way to the oracle, Manto managed to get to Delphi and heard that she and the other Thebans were to found a colony in Ionia across the Aegean Sea. Arriving at the future site of Claros, Monto and the others were then seized by the Cretans under Rosicius, who was at that time colonizing Caria. But when Rosicius realized that Monto was a prophet and that Apollo asked her and the other Thebans to come, he released them and even married Monto. Their son was the great seer Mopsus. Next image. Following the fall of Troy, Calchas came to Claros, where he decided to challenge the famed seer Mopsus. In the end, Calchas lost. So, so this, of course, the foundation then of this particular city, I mean, sorry, oracle site, excuse me, was connected to a holy lineage. Excuse me, next image. Of course, historically, the oracle Claros is connected to the story of the moving of the Smyrnans, at that time living directly next to Ephesus. And so the story is that the ancient city of Smyrna was located directly next to Ephesus, and they moved from that site to the city, to the place known as Mount Pagus, which is further up to the north. And this is the image of the Acropolis on Mount Pagus of Smyrna, which is Izmir today, right? Pausanias writes in the second century, he says, the modern city was founded by Alexander, the son of Philip, in accordance with a vision and a dream. It is said that Alexander was hunting on Mount Pagus, and then after the hunt was over, he came to a sanctuary of the Nemesis and found there a spring and a plane tree in front of the sanctuary growing over the water. While he slept under the plane tree, it is said that the Nemesis appeared and bade him to found a city there and remove into the Smyrnans from the old city. So the Smyrnans sent an ambassador to Claros to make inquiries about the circumstance, and the gods made the answer. Should we move to this site of Mount Pagus? Should we make a settlement here? And of course, Claros is thrice yes, 4 times blessed with those men be who dwell in Pagus beyond the sacred Melis. So they migrated of their own free will and believe now in the 2 nemesis instead of 1, saying that their mother is night, while the Athenians say that the father of the goddess is Rhamnus in the ocean. Next image. When Germanicus, the adoptive son of Emperor Tiberius, visited Claros, the oracle was not exactly what he wanted to hear. For the prophet told him that his death would be premature, and as it turned out, Germanicus died within a year. Inscriptions of the prophecies in connection to Claros were prominently placed in the cities that consulted its oracle. Next image. Archaeology has revealed that people already occupied the area in the 10th century BCE. And we have found, of course, much in the way of early pottery here. So it was established early on. Much of the general design of the current Temple of Apollo Claros dates from the 3rd century BCE. Let's just take a look around. Claros, these are all my pictures, of course. I've been here. Next image. You can see here, this is, of course, the propylon. This is the entranceway. And then, of course, it goes into a sacred processional way. Much of it is flooded throughout the year. Next image. There we go. It's you can see, kind of looks like California, doesn't it, when it comes to its topography and its vegetation. Next image. What I love is there are the oracles, much of the inscriptions of what happened, what are written on this pillar. You can see that this is covered with inscriptions. Some of it, of course, absolutely have to do with bureaucracy and various rules. Others do report oracles. And again, if you look carefully, you can see that this is covered with writing. Next image. I just love the way the fashioning of this particular Odeon. Next image. And you know, Claros is also known for its frogs. The whole place when I was there, the frogs were just literally leaping about. Frogs and turtles, quite a plenty of them. Next image, but kind of swampy too. And I got slushed out. There is the monumental gateway again, the propylon, as you enter into, and you can see again the path there is just covered in mud. Next image, another perspective of it. And you can see that you have to dig down a little ways. It's because obviously in archaeology, there's always an accumulation of debris, making things higher and higher as time goes on, right? Soil is moved because of wind and erosion and accumulated debris, and you can see that here. Next image. You can see some of the art. Okay, next image. Love this column. Okay, so here is the temple of Apollo. It dates from the 3rd century BC and follows the Doric order, being a peripeteral structure, 6 by 11 columns, right? The temple was then reconstructed at the end of the Hellenistic period. It is of great interest to add that one of the cargo ships that was on its way to Claros with marble for this particular construction sunk before arriving at its destination just off the coast, having arrived from the Proconnesus Island. And as we know from utilizing isotopic and meteorological dates from the marble itself, we actually found this ship. It was discovered in 1993. The sunken ship has been under excavation, however, since 2005. So I think it's interesting. So the Emperor Hadrian, next image, Emperor Hadrian restored the temple. There I am. This is me in my column. I'm holding things up there, right? The Emperor Hadrian restored the temple, but according to Pausanias, the shrine was still not complete in this time. He says the land of the Ionians has the finest possible climate and sanctuaries such as are to be found nowhere else. First, because of its size and wealth, is that of the Ephesian goddess. And then come 2 unfinished sanctuaries of Apollo, the one at Brandikai, which is at Didyma in Milesian territory, and the one at Claros, he says, in the land of the Colophonians. Besides these, 2 temples in Ionia were burnt down by the Persians, the one of Hera in Samos and that of Athena in Phocia. Damaged though they are by fire, I still found them as a wonder, unquote. He writes 1,900 years ago. Now, next image. So you get the idea of this is actually looking across the way from the temple. Next image. This is my good friend Mehmet. He was with me all the time in a lot of my travels. Next image in Turkey. Oh, I guess I put it in the picture. Sorry. Next image. That's good though. I like seeing this anyway. Yeah. Okay. So inscriptions in different places. Next image. Okay. So here we're getting into the labyrinth. Beneath the temple of Apollo at Claros was constructed a special crypt reserved only for those who sought an oracle from Apollo. Within this subterranean vault was a dark and twisted labyrinth, intended to make the seeker believe they were moving through the underworld. Fortunately, this labyrinth completely survives today. Next image. So this is, of course, close-up of the temple of Apollo, but we'll see it in a second. Next image. There we go. Look at that. This kind of construction is called an adyton, a term often used for an adyton. We'll be using this term. We used it earlier. We'll use it again. An adyton basically is used for, it's like a cella, right? Or a naus, right? This is a restricted inner sanctum of a temple that was intended to be opened to the privileged few. The word adyton actually does mean inaccessible. At the end of this dark maze below the temple of Apollo was the room where the prophecies were uttered. The oracle at Claros functioned by means of water. And you can still see the water here. Here the prophet first drew water from the sacred spring, then drank it, and then, after being possessed by the spirit of Apollo, uttered the oracle, replying in a hexameter poetic form. However, the drinking of this prophetic water was not without a price to the priest who partook of it. With Pliny the Elder saying, quote, in the cave of Apollo of Claros at Colophon, there is a pool, a draught from which causes marvelous oracle utterances to be produced, though the life of the drinkers are shortened. The sacred spring still exists in the form of a rectangular well with the adytum below the cell of the temple. Prophets of in Claros were called the Thespoiades, and traditionally were always men. So these are men. But then again, these are the men who have very short-lived lives. They're beginning, of course, with their line with the legendary Mopsus. So we have this lineage now. So going from one to the next, as opposed to like the Oracle Delphi, which is the older female in the surrounding district around it. In this case, it's a designated line, Oracle line. The cult statue of the Clarion Apollo was seated with a lyre in hand. Beyond the temple of Apollo were situated colossal statues. Let's go to the next image. Oh yeah, this is more of the labyrinth here. So it's pretty amazing, right? Next image. Okay, so now we're looking beyond. Next image, the temple. Oh yeah, and again, this is the subterranean part that's so visible. Next image. Yeah, it is a pretty cool place. Next image. Okay, this is kind of strange. So beyond the temple, there are these colossal statues of a seated Apollo with his lyre, along with Artemis and Leto, as well as fragments of others. So you can see that kind of way out there. Next image. You can see these are huge. The next image, that's Mehmet there. They try to put these together as best they could. Next image. But there you have it. Next image. Now I want to show Notion a little bit, just briefly. So as I said before earlier, I talked about the fact that you always have a supportive village or town that takes care of the more secular infrastructure to bring in the pilgrims, places to eat, places to stay before you move on to the site itself. Hopefully, also to reduce congestion at these oracle sites. And also a place for rabble rousers to hang out, places to drink, to have a sense of levity, and to keep the sacred areas more sacred. And as you saw, because the harbor silted up, this is right here. This is Notion, which was one of the supportive towns for Claros. So a lot of the administration was done here. Next image. At different times historically, especially during the Hellenistic age. You're taking a look at these, you're thinking these are all rocks. The reality is a lot of this are just ruins that have been eroded away. Beautiful place. Next image. And I just kind of want to give you sights of this. You can see there's the remains of a theater. Much of Notion has not been excavated. So you're not going to see the elaborate reconstructions that you see in other sites. Next image. In fact, when I was there, it was just me and Mehmet there, and not one single person was there. Just the two of us. The two of us in an entire ancient city of ruins. Next image. Just to prove I was there. There I am. Hi. Okay. Next image. So you can see the rows again. There's been lots of disturbance when it comes to the soil. But you also see to the left, you can see there's like a little walkway that goes between the seating. Can you see that? I think that's kind of interesting. Next image. And this right here is the Bouleuterian. This is where the city council was. The other was a theater. This is more of a squared building. You see the steps there. Next image. And this is where many of the decisions went on, not only for Notion, but also for Claros. So you can see that that column has fallen from above. So there used to be a colonnade that went around each of the four different sides of this particular city council room. Next image. And there I am just going, hi, look at me. I'm here and I always want to be here. I always love exploring ancient sites. Next image. Me and my element, right? There I am. Me, maybe not an elemental, but enjoying my elements, being there. Again, loving this place. You can see I am wearing shorts. Always have the water there. And that's typically what I would wear doing archaeology. That's my I have these camel knees. I worked night crew at a grocery store for 12 years. I was always on my knees, and somehow I built all these really strong calluses. When I did archaeology, I literally was in shorts and on my knees, and never, and still to this day, I'm 59 years old. I have absolutely no knee problems whatsoever. So I don't know what happened. Maybe I'll have to reserve that for later on in life. I don't know. But next image. There I am standing up there. Next image. Okay, next image. Sorry, that's some. So I didn't realize I had so many, but we have an old Hellenistic wall there that used to go around ancient Notion. That's pretty well preserved, at least. Next image. And you also have these interesting graves, these rock cut stone tombs. Next image. And so there you have it. There I am hanging out. Next image. In these tombs. Okay, so let's talk about what is said. Okay, so we talked about the site, we talked about the place. Let's talk about what this oracle would say. Okay, so um, as I said, the site is covered with inscriptions, and also inscriptions connected to Claros are located throughout this region. So in other cities, you have these dedications that include these inscriptions. Of course, the importance of the Oracle Claros is beyond question. There's even a temple dedicated to the Claros Apollo at Saglassus, one of the cities of Pisidia, which is in southern Anatolia, Asia Minor, Turkey today. But beyond that, there's evidence of inscriptions related to Claros at places like Ephesus, Hierapolis, Kalopolis, Caesarea, Trotella, and Pergamon. Next image. Now, when a plague hit Ephesus upon the arrival of Roman troops from the Parthian War, an oracle of Apollo, preserved in a hexametrical inscription, ordered the Ephesians to bring a gilded statue of Artemis to a sanctuary in the Hermos Valley and to praise her glory with the singing of hymns. This oracle arrived from the sacred precinct of Claros. The inscription declares as follows: "Approach Artemis of the fair quiver, born from the same stock as I am, for she is the leader of the whole city, nurse of your family, increaser of men, giver of fruits. Bring in her image, shining with gold from Ephesus, and set it up in a temple with joy in your hearts. She will ward off your sufferings and dismiss the destroying poison of the plague, melting the wax molded images by night with the flames of her fire-bearing torches, the evil tokens of the mage's craft." So there seems to be some dark magic that was believed to cause this plague, right? "But when you have carried out my instructions," says Apollo, "concerning Artemis for the goddess, worship the arrow-pouring goddess, invincible, straight shooting, with hymns and sacrifices, the glorious girl who watches over you. Girls and boys together, Celebrate the maiden in dances and feasts everywhere above the salty lands of the Maenonian Hermus, garlanding yourself with the broad myrtle after summoning chaste Artemis for the land of Ephesus, so that she may help you forever in her undefiled state. If you do not accomplish these rites, then you will suffer the punishment of fire. This oracle was given by Apollo. The end. Unquote. So you better do it, right? So here we have the Artemis with the torches. Next image. As Dieter Nib notes, a famed archaeologist of Ephesus, he says, here the goddess appears in this oracle as a nocturnal magician who burns waxen figurines as a remedy against the plague. Rick Strelian, another great scholar, appears to agree with Nib, saying that here Artemis Ephesia is not the polymastic nor the huntress, but the torch-bearing one and the shooter of arrows. Unquote. The golden image of Artemis Ephesia itself was demonstrated as the specific magical agent brought from Ephesus to the temple in the Hermos Valley. Once the image was established, Artemis was then viewed as able to ward off your sufferings and dismiss the man-destroying poison of the plague, unquote. As evidence from this inscription, it was with the arrival of her image, hence her literal presence in material form, that Artemis was able to defeat with, quote, the flames of her fire-bearing torches, the evil tokens of a mage's craft, unquote, referring to the point that this disaster was brought on specifically by somebody that was deemed as a magician through the employment of what is said as evil tokens, meaning the plague was the result of black magic. This magician had therefore used a binding spell, a defixio, to seal the curse causing the plague, and those connected with the temple in the Hermos Valley. And the Ephesians sought Artemis to break the curse. The reference to the magician melting the wax molded images by night refers to the ritual involving this curse, right? So on this occasion, Artemis Ephesia is a goddess of magic, or maybe she's in the guise of a goddess of salvation, right? So it's hard to be able to see which one, right? J.R. Harrison remarks on, quote, the strong expression of reciprocity demanded on Artemis's intervention on behalf of her dependents, the characteristics of a relationship between benefactor and beneficiary in antiquity, with cultic ritual and praise in her honor. So get this, cultic ritual and praise in her honor, able to elicit her sustained beneficence, while ingratitude will result in the return of the dreaded position. So clearly, Artemis Ephesia is intended to receive special worship in return for services rendered in breaking the spell of the magician and thereby ending the plague. In fact, the goddess is to be adored, received with, quote, joy in your hearts, unquote. After all, Artemis is coming to rescue them, right? To save them. And all they had to do in return is to worship her in a genuine manner, in a way that is not forced with praises, hymns, and sacrifices. To deny a soteriological connection here, a salvic connection here, is unthinkable. With this said, the relational aspects are still balanced by a certain functionality. For why is her golden image specifically needed to be brought from Ephesus to this other temple in the first place? The action does not appear to be strictly out of honor or custom, and the question must be asked, who or what is exactly warding away their sufferings? Is it Artemis by herself, or Artemis in connection to her image? For worshippers of Artemis Ephesia, her cult statue was always viewed as a medium through which her power was displayed, and because of this, her literal physical image was consistently treated with reverence. The fact that an actual image of Artemis, next image, appears to be one of the ingredients necessary to ward away the evil of this magician and to break his spell via his use of waxen images is evidence of magic directly connected to the goddess by most definitions. Current scholars often like to place easily understood either or categories for ancient religious phenomena, especially in relation to magic, but the ancients do not accommodate our modern pre-designated categories very well. Is Artemis here a goddess of salvation or a goddess of magic? My answer, I will say, who happen to be an expert in this field, is yes for both. Beyond, next image. So there's the polymastic Artemis. My photo, next image. I believe that one is. Okay, next image. Actually, that one wasn't. I should have used my own. I literally have like 15 of them. Beyond Ephesus, one of the inscriptions from the Oracle Claros arise from Areopolis. Actually, next image. I don't know how that got in there. Oh, okay. Okay, so okay, we'll just go back one more. I got an idea. So go back one, and that's okay. And we'll take that one down because that's a Kilopolis. Okay. So just look at me for just a little bit here. Beyond one of the inscriptions from the Oracle Claros arriving from Areopolis, beginning with a reference to Apollo killing the python serpent. So there's one at here declaring, quote, the sacred earth is wrathful for the one python killed by my arrows. Next, the inscription indicates that plague hitting Hierapolis was a result of divine wrath. Quote, there's the god's grievous wrath I command you to avoid with libations, feast, and holocaust sacrifices. Now, I just want to bring this up is that what will happen in ancient times, you have what's called Olympian sacrifices, and you have chthonic sacrifices. Olympian sacrifices are those that are placed above on an altar. And what will happen is you have a little burning of the thigh, and that is given to the gods. And everybody then can feast upon it and partake of the holiness, right? Kind of like communion. Everybody gets to have a part of this. The Holocaust, however, is a chthonic or underworld one. And so what they will do is they'll dig a hole and holocaust, cost as in caustic means to burn, holos means the entire. And so what's going to happen is the entire sacrifice is burned completely to the gods of the underworld. So in this case, what will happen is that there's a plague that is hitting Areopolis. And so it talks about, and it compares it, of course, with reference to the Apollo killing the python serpent. And it says, the sacred earth is wrathful for the one python killed by my arrows. And so the inscription indicates that the plague hitting Areopolis was a result of divine wrath. There's the gods' grievous wrath I command you to avoid with libations and feast and holocaust sacrifices. So this is, of course, the chthonic underworld sacrifices where you burn the whole thing up. Next, to appease this wrath, libations and holocaust offerings were to be offered to Gaia, the embodiment of Earth herself, at her regular sanctuary, according to the Oracle of Claros. After this, Ether and the heavenly gods were to receive incense offerings. And so now we have another kind of sacrifice. So this would be the Olympic sacrifices. So following the Olympic sacrifices, the chthonic gods were also to be appeased, designated specifically as Demeter and the gods of the underworld, with the heroes in the ground who are closely associated with them. At this point, the citizens of Areopolis are reminded that they need to remember Apollo of Claros instructing them to set up apotropaic statues of the Clarion Apollo with his arrows ready for action directly in front of their city gates. Now, I find this absolutely fascinating. You're hardly going to hear this anywhere else. So they're saying, you know what? In order to avoid this plague, you're going to set up statues of Apollo as a divine archer, and you're going to set up these statues around your city of Areopolis with the arrows pointed out. And it's believed that that through this action, once again, we're going into this idea that just like we had with the Artemis image, right? The image of Apollo has this power, apotropaic, to ward off that which is evil. In this way, the Caries bringing this infection would depart as divine wrath is appeased. Beyond that, those of Areopolis must send a choir of young boys and girls to Colophon, meaning to the oracle site nearby, to sing songs in celebration of the Clarion Apollo, along with libations and hecatombs. What I think is interesting here is that, oh, by the way, after you do that, after you set up these statues of Apollo as the archer around the around your city, also can you bring the boys choir? Can you send them over to Claros? It's kind of like, okay, we want some entertainment, right? So I find that interesting, right? Um, now we're at this next image. As for the surviving oracle Claros, set up at Calliopolis, this is also intended to ward away a plague, right? So if you now plan to see an escape from distress, it says, accomplish libations to the gods underneath, each of who you know well, and cut a he-goat for the fine-haired Hades, and sacrifice to the goddess Persephone a sheep, both animals black. Once their black blood has flown into the pits, pour in from above a libation with collected remedies. These the flames shall immediately consume at once with the sacrifices and the sweet smelling frankincense. And then fire has to be sweetened with sparkling wine and with white milk. I mean, I'm telling you, you want details? You got details here. So again, to ward away from plague, you have to do a certain ritual, right? Libations to the gods, right? And so, yeah, you have a he goat, right, and a sheep. So he goat for Hades, a sheep for Persephone, and both have to be black. They are, of course, thrown into pits. And then, of course, this would be a holocaust, right? Sacrifice, you throw into a pit. And then, of course, you have the fire consuming it, but you make sure that there's sweet smelling frankincense, also sparkling wine and white milk, and you pour that all over, and this will stop the plague. Accordingly, this plague was brought on by what appears to be a curse for following a break in the inscription. It continues by to say, if the fear of Katush, so that they move fast at once into the innermost part of the underworld, where the foundation of Tartarus appears. And you're going, what did you just say? Well, guess what? Scholars are also stumbling upon what this means, especially the word katush, because this can be understood as meaning a curse. And if this is so, then the remedy of Apollo is to break the power as arriving from a ritual or magical action. In this way, the inscription crosses into the same magical context as the inscription at Ephesus from the Oracle of Claros. The citizens of Calopolis, like those of Areopolis, were to also set up a statue of Apollo with his bow and arrow ready to further away the disease. With this action, the inscription concludes, if hateful illness comes near with plans to kill men, vengeance shall still come, unquote. Next image. For those of the city of Caesarea Trocheta, their plague is referred to by the oracle Claros, that it came from Their plague came from specifically the goddess of vengeance. This terrible plague is described as follows. It says, woe, woe, restless sorrow attacks the plain, an inescapable pestilence, holding in one hand the sword of vengeance, raising into the other the grievous image of those recently dead. It completely wears out the plowed hand, reaps the newly born, and the whole stock perishes and constrains the mortals to suffer with defilement and such evil it plans in one's hand. In response to the plague, the oracle Claros states, but you men, eager to escape from these according to the ordinance, who are really very anxious to come near to my help, seek to prepare a pure drink from the seven springs, that you may have to fumigate with sulfur from afar, and to draw the foam, and straightway sprinkle the houses with nymphs who are pleasing, so that the unwounded men left behind in the plain fulfill a beautiful sacrifice from the revived growth. So basically, in this case, the use of sulfur for purification is actually being used. This is mentioned in the Odyssey. For example, when Euclea purifies the household in preparation for the final banquet, you have an example of sulfur being used in this way. Following this action, the citizens of the city were to establish a statue of Apollo in the plain to ward against the plague, with Apollo specifically here called as Savior or Soterea. Next image. There I am. This is a Pergamum. This is huge ruins of the Red Court, which is actually a temple of Serapis Isis. And beneath it, there is an underground river. There's a stairway to this underground river, which is understood to be the river Styx. It's pretty interesting. Most people miss it, but I think it's pretty amazing. Unlike the more chthonic recommendations to ward off the plague that we see in the cities of Ephesus, Areopolis, Calopolis, and Caesarea, the oracle at Claros only recommends more Olympian forms of sacrifice to the city of Pergamum. It says, another to the virgin Tritogenia bore with her spear, and another shall sing to Asclepius, my dear son. They should burn up for 7 days on the majestic altars to Pallas the thighs of an unyoked, chaste 2-year-old heifer, of a 3-year-old bullocks to Zeus and Zeus Bacchus, in just the same way as they also will be offering to the son of Cronos the thigh bones of the accustomed bull, and prepare a sacrificial feast. As many of you as are unmarried, young boys dressed in short mantles, but not without your fathers, to each drink offering you pour, you should ask from the immortals the right remedy of the plague, so that it advances far away into the distant lands of the enemy peoples. Now, this is a very interesting one. Next image. Many scholars, this is Pergamon. This is my picture, but it's an old one, including Valerai, believe that because of the more philosophical context of Pergamon, that either the oracle of Claros alter its prophecy to fit in with a more Olympian disposition of the city, as opposed to chthonic or underworldly. You can see it literally is a city in the clouds, or the city magistrates altered it to conform to their expectations. Furthermore, Pergamum was a city that hosted the Asclepium, the famous medical center in the ancient world. Galen often emphasized how various diseases were not a product of divine wrath, and so it fits under the guise of superstition. Next image. The oracle Claros. There I am, there at, that's the temple dedicated to the Emperor Trajan, the divine Trajan. Next image in Pergamum. Here we go. This is, of course, this is the site of the famous altar of Zeus, which, by the way, was taken by the Germans and is now in the Pergamon Museum. But the Oracle of Claros often focuses upon Zeus as he was very important to those of Pergamum, especially in regards to the famous altar of Zeus located here. With this said, while Zeus was connected with being born from Pergamum, this inscription refers to him as both from Mount Olympus as well as a Titan. Next image. Because it says, Father of gods and also of barren men, you who pursue radiantly the dazzling edge of the sky, having been called by your races the maker of life, having separated the common from the good and matter, you gave all to all mortals sufficient use of a good life. You distribute the earth and the wave-washed sea, the air and all other things, created also by your wisdom, unquote. Zeus is also declared, next image, the god of all the seasons, you ruling always supremely over the seasons of the sky, over the spring that covers the fields with well-reared foliage, over the summer that reaps the wheat full of ears, over autumn the fruitful that gathers in the purple grapes, and over winter that brings well-mixed time to men, unquote. The seasons here reveal Zeus as ultimately control over all the cosmos. Following Zeus proceeds a long line of other gods in this inscription connected to the Oracle Claros, located, but this one, of course, obviously inscribed in Pergamum. He says, come with the famous healing doctors of gods, who leads the divine Hygeia into his shining house as his wife, with you, Eunomia, and Eustacia, and shining Arene, and with Hera, the yoker of marriage, your glorious wife, and with Themis, the first author, the prophetess, with forceful decrees, and bright-eyed Athena, who dreads marriage, and with Hermes, the messenger, the guardian of boys, and with the Morea, the famous, blameless, inevitable ones. Ultimately, there is this appeal, come, save the polis, blessed, happy, and solve the mystery. And of course, in the end, that's apparently what just happened. So, Pergamon, city in the skies, the great Acropolis overlooking the great plains below, definitely has an Olympian appeal. And I think it's interesting that the Oracle of Claros will adjust its technical language to fit this particular locality. Next image. Okay, this is a bigger one. Here it is. This is the Oracle Temple of Apollo, Didyma. Once again, I've been here. Pergamon, also been there. I've been to the Temple of Apollo at Didyma actually on 3 different times. So, okay, so here it is. So next image also, this is kind of outline map. We know that nearby Miletus was a Minoan settlement with many artifacts found here from this great civilization. The Greeks preserve a memory of this ancient Minoan settlement in their story of how the Cretans founded the city of Miletus under either Sarpedion or a certain Miletus by name, Apollo's son and Minos's grandson, according to Strabo. According to Pausanias, the Oracle of Apollo was founded before the arrival of the Ionian Greeks around the 11th century BCE, but it may go back even further, back to the time of the Mycenaeans, and again, if not the Minoans. And the ancient name for Miletus, as you can see down there, is Milawanda, under the Luvians. Next image. The Greeks believed, there's me at Miletus, there's the temple there. The Greeks believed that this area about the Oracle of Apollo and the site itself was active during the Mycenaean era, known as the Age of Heroes by the ancient Greeks, and was associated with certain Broncos, who was beloved by Apollo. According to Statius in his Thebaid, a certain Amphiaraus declared that Broncos was an oracle speaker. When Amphiaraus died, the Argives, mourning his death, directly referred to Broncos, along with what was described as the Didymian thresholds. It was, so it's kind of take a look around this area. Next image. It was in this land that Hercules founded a great altar of ashes, and from Broncos' country, a certain Erginius joined the crew of the Argonauts with Jason in command. During the epic battle of Troy, the Carians were said to arrive from Brachus's glen to fight on the side of the Trojans. Later, after the battle, King Menelaus dedicated Euphorbus' shield here in Apollo's temple. So, yes, next image. Yes, if you're going back to the Iliad, even though, again, we're back to the Homeric and back to the 8 and 700s BC. Remember, the origins of these stories go back to the 1200s BC, back to the Mycenaean period. So it seems that this oracle site may be quite ancient, indeed, perhaps. As I said before, evidence for the Mycenaean occupation of Miletus is everywhere to be found. In fact, in some cases, we see it going back to at least the 16th century BCE. There's even a Mycenaean fortification wall that was discovered here. And according to Hittite documents, as I mentioned before, this was the city of Milawanda that was under the power of the Ahiyawa, another word for Ahia, which are the Mycenaeans. With the Ionian migration occurring between 12 to 1000 BC, one story told how Neleus, who led the settlement upon the west coast of Asia Minor, received from a maid at Bronchidae earth and water, which is the predicted sign for the founding of the city. The fact is, we're seeing again an early precedent of holiness for this site. Next image. Here it is. By the way, this is the temple of Apollo at Didyma, which is just south of Miletus, connected to Miletus. In this case, of course, even though there's a small little town around Didyma that supplied for various tourists, they did build a very strong sacred way to Miletus. Because the idea is we'd rather have all you guys at the city of Miletus nearby, and then come visit and then go away. It's kind of like the same kind of setup that we saw with Claros. You know, you go to Notion or Colophon if you want to do your secular stuff, and then do all the sacred stuff at the Oracle site. But please, by nightfall, go back, stay somewhere else. Okay, so anyway, so this is this temple. By the way, this temple in size is 3 times larger than the Parthenon in Greece. 3 times larger in total space. You thought the Parthenon in Greece was large. This is 3 times larger. So you can actually fit it inside the actual temple. Is that fascinating, right? So this is a huge, enormous temple dedicated, of course, to the Oracle of Apollo that is here. The earliest structure so far discovered beneath the present temple of Apollo dates from the 8th to 7th centuries, consisted of a walled enclosure. Around 600 BCE, the Homeric hymn to Apollo invokes the great oracle god as Lord of Lycia, Monoia, and Miletus. And so Lycia would be Lycia, Myone would be Lydia, and Miletus, of course. So, and you hold Miletus, a lovely seaside city. This, of course, is 600 BCE. Next image. It's huge. And this is my photo. It's absolutely huge, enormous. Next image. This is the front facade area. There's me. You'll see other pictures. This is me. I'm trying to figure out which trip this was. This is the 2003 one. Some of these pictures are also from a trip back in 1993. Oh, okay. Sorry, I've been to Didyma 4 times. Sorry. Okay, next image. Yeah, there's me. By the way, always bring water. There you have it. I'm advertising Erically. Please try it. Next image. Got my hat on there. There's me later on hanging out. It's a great temple. Next image. The Ionian Greeks named the city Didyma, which means in Greek twin. And since this was an oracle dedicated to Apollo, this designation must also include Apollo's twin sister, Artemis. Well, guess what? They recently discovered a temple of Artemis next to the temple of Apollo, which also connects to oracles. So here in this German map, because the English ones are all off. You can see down the bottom, you got the Apollo temple, and you see above, you see Artemis, and you see there's the Artemis temple, and it's connected by way of a sacred road. Next image, and this is my pictures of the sacred road. I did what I could to. This was off limits, so of course at the time, so of course I followed it. Next image. It's not off limits anymore. You can go on it. It's okay. And you can see it kind of turns the bend. But when next image, and I almost got to the Temple of Artemis and almost there. In fact, it's right there, just around the way, and I couldn't get any further. Next image. But it has been excavated. Here's a published image of it. Another image, next one. And you can see, yeah, there is indeed a Temple of Artemis. This is Artemis Spring, from which oracles were driven. But again, there needs to be more work done in this area. Next image. So it's Didyma the twin. So here we go. Okay, so in the 6th century, the Didymian, dedicated to Apollo, was built to enclose the earlier sanctuary. King Croesus of Lydia, remember him, was particularly dedicated to the temple at Didyma. Herodotus writes, and the offerings of Croesus at Brandicae of the Milesians, as I learned by inquiry, are equal in weight and like those at Delphi. Their new temple of Apollo was unroofed, followed the Ionic order, and was intended to enclose the sacred spring and a sacred grove of laurel trees, as well as a small inner temple. The Nuskos, north and south walls of the structure, discovered by the German excavators, by the way. This unroofed adyton was intentionally left open facing east. All these structures were completed around 560 to 550 BCE. Next image. But of course, we know what happens. Long story really short is that this falls to the Persians arrive when Croesus and the city of Sardis fell in 546 BCE. All of Ionia fell under Persian domain. But Miletus surrendering peacefully under Cyrus, who promised the same rights and privileges they enjoyed under the Lydians. Next image. Okay, so we do have some earlier images. Apollo from the Didyma temple. This is the Oracle Apollo connected to the Didyma. Next, that's the image. I do a little close up so you can see it better. And you can see holding here, of course, the deer. Next image. You have the sacred way that connects the Didyma of Apollo with Miletus there. This is part of it right there. So you can see there's now people are allowed to walk the processional way. So it's all good now. Next image. Unfortunately, during the Ionian revolt, the temple of Apollo at Didyma was destroyed. Next image. And that was, of course, under Darius of Persia. Next image. You do have, of course, various votive offerings that are found around the area. This one is dedicated to Zeus. Next image. So we're at the temple itself. Let's talk about this. So eventually, you're going to have the rebuilding of the temple. The temple of Apollo at Didyma was again a peripaterial temple, meaning it was a structure where the columns of the front portico are returned along its sides as wings at the distance of 1 or 2 intercolumniations from the walls of the naos. Next image. In the case of the temple at Didyma, there it is. A double file of Ionic columns surround the naos. The pronaos was very commanding. Next image. Having 3 consecutive rows of columns, 4 on each side, following moving through the grove of columns. Next image. So we're moving through the columns here of the pronaos of the front porch. Next image. That one, of course, remains at height. Look at the groves of these. enormous columns. Look how close they are together. Next image. There's me later times there hanging out. Next one. Look at the details too. Next image. Just amazing. Just beautiful. The ornate of the Hellenistic temple. Next image. Okay. So following moving through the grove of columns, one actually reaches a blank wall rather than the usual cella door. Enters then to the inner sanctum, to the naos, or more properly, the nauskos, a mini temple, and its inner court, aditon, was down one of two long, sloping passageways built within the thick walls of the temple. This is one of the passageways. Next image. And you can see this is from the other direction. By the way, there's another set of stairways that proceeded upward and were called, according to the building accounts, they called them the labyrinth, which is an expected description at oracle site. Yet just where those steps went is still under debate. It perhaps went to a terrace. We don't know, though. There could be an upper chamber. So you have a set of stairs that are going down into the inner sanctum of this temple, and you have another stairs are going up, but we don't know what happened to that. Next image. So you go through and you go down into the center here. As the descending entrances moved downward, they gave access to the inner court, which was still open to the sky, but isolated from the world by the high walls of the cella. Next image. And you can see, kind of go through the groves, and there's a mini Naskos. There's a mini temple that's in the middle. Next image. And you go a little further, as you see, there's the front area to the left, and you go up, there's the sloping, the staircases are behind those double columns. Just a little to the right, that's where those staircases are. And it goes down to this deeper inner courtyard. Next image. And so this kind of gives you the idea. You go through and you go down. Next image. And so this is the other side. So once on the other side, that's me, get an idea where it is. This is now facing, going towards the courtyard. Let's go to the next image. This is some details of these columns on the opposite side of the front. This is facing the inner court. Next image. And there I am kind of moving down into the court. You can see the staircase to the right, and there's one to the left as well, coming from the front on the opposite side. Next image. Going further back, you could see now the remnants, the foundations of the small temple. Next image. And you can see a little clearer there. Next image. And this is now facing what I'm looking from the stairway that I was standing on earlier. And you can see it's a very large court area, and you can see the temple back there. But you can also see in the foreground on the right-hand side, you see a sacred spring. And so basically, you descend down. There was a small temple containing in its own cella the bronze cult image of the god. So the image of the god was in that small little temple. So it's a huge, enormous building. In that little temple there, you have the image. And there was a grove of laurels here, sacred to Apollo. The inner walls of the cella were articulated by pilasters standing on a base. Turning back again, the visitor saw a monumental staircase, which we just saw, that led up to the three openings to a room whose roof was supported by two columns on the central cross axis. The image of this Naxos is revealed in a Milesian coin, minted in the 3rd century, revealing a tetrastyle temple. Below the floor of the Naxos was discovered a pit, a bothros, with a marble plate at the bottom. Below this marble plate was another pit consisting of earth mixed with bird bones and iron bits, gold and silver items, and bronze coins from the Hellenistic era. After this was another marble plate and another pit of fill. These appeared to be chthonic sacrifices or remnants of rituals related to them. Or they could even be consecrated objects that had to be disposed of, but could not be put in a place that could not be sanctified. The sacred spring was located in the western part of the Adyton, and in position was just north of the Naskos. Next image. So here's a close-up of the temple where the bronze image was located. Next image. And this is from above. You see the temple foundation, but take a look. See where the spring is, that round circular thing? That's going to be important later on in our conversation. Next image. And you can see here, here's the open spring, and this is it during the Hellenistic period of time. You got the round altar in front. Next image. There's me at the sacred spring. Looking down, the sacred spring was located, as I mentioned, in the western part of the Adyton, and in position was just north of the Naskos. Archaeology has revealed that the spring actually shifted positions from time to time. For a while, it was here during the Hellenistic and Roman era. During the Byzantine era, the spring actually moved to the eastern part of the Adyton, forming the font of the church that was later located here. According to Milesian tradition, the source for this magical oracle spring was from Mycale, the water flowing beneath the Latamic Gulf and then accordingly rising to the temple of Didyma as if it could go underneath the Gulf. Also, according to local belief, the sacred spring was a location where Zeus and Leto made love, which would eventually result in the birth of Apollo and Artemis. So this is that site right there, the font from which has sprung the beginnings, of course, of Artemis and Apollo. Next image. Okay, and of course, here's the exterior wall. Next image. Just breathtaking, this place. And of course, the inner wall with the pilasters. Next image. Okay, let's take it down. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit. All right. So we know that specifically a prophetess foretold all the oracles. One inscription discovered about the site tells how a hydropher of Artemis Pythi's grandmother, a certain Tryphosa, was directly chosen by Apollo to be his prophetess. Another inscription states, Gaius, I thank the pretty little prophetess. A third mentions a prophetess named Cleopatra, the prophetess of the Didymian. Now, as for how the oracles were foretold, early in the morning, the prophetess had to first make preliminary sacrifices to prepare for their mantic encounter. Meanwhile, those seeking an oracle gathered before the pronaos in front of the great portal of the east chamber. The requests were specifically written down and handed to the prophet, who then went down one of the side chambers to the Adyton, to that small little temple that you just saw in the inner sanctum there in the courtyard, and one to the sacred spring with the prophetesses waiting him. So you got two different locations. As the priestess sat above this sacred spring, which you just saw, right? She was inspired by it, with her words then interpreted by the listening priest or priestess. Iamblichus, in his mysteries, specifically mentions that the gift of prophecy was bestowed, quote, by vapor from the water, as one breathed in by the prophetesses at Brachendai. Revelation set in the words then began to flow. She then spoke out the prophecy, and the prophet listened to it carefully, writing it down. The prophet then rose up the stairs again, returning to the east chamber, with the three doors of the west chamber opened, allowing the consultants to see the upper back wall of the Adyton. This is the time where an epiphany window would be revealed. The prophet then crossed over the east chamber and then spoke to the crowd below him with the answers to their consultations. I love the fact that when people say, we don't know anything about what they did when it comes to their traditions. No, we know everything they did. We know quite a bit, not everything, but quite a bit. Now, there is some dispute. Others say that those on the east chamber actually descended down one of the long corridors with the prophet, having the idea of descent into the lower world. That's one additional idea. Iamblichus describes specifically what happens next. So let's hear from Iamblichus, who hung out in that area. Iamblichus hung out in this particular area, so he kind of would know. He says as follows. He says, the woman oracle at Parakandai, whether she is filled with a divine light while holding a wand first conveyed to her by some god, or foretells the future while sitting on an axle, or received the god by wetting her feet, or a hem in the water, or by inhaling vapor from the water, makes herself ready in all of these ways for the reception and partakes of him without. So he mentions there are different ways in which she will receive her oracles. So in some cases, she will be holding a special wand. In other cases, she'll be sitting on an axle, or she will wet her feet into the spring, or a hem of her dress will be in the water. At that point, she becomes possessed by Apollo. He continues a number of sacrifices and the law of the whole consecration and all the other things done reverently before the oracle singing. The prophetess bathes and and fasts for 3 whole days. Her stay in the Edita already near the light and delighting in it for much of the time. So she stays in that little building that we saw, with the image of Apollo in it, having a clear meaning. For all these practices showing a summoning of the god to be present and his wondrous presence even before she reaches the customary place. And in the very spirit that rises from the spring, they reveal another god spate from that place, the author of that place and of the spring itself and of the whole magic art. So this could be read that she held the wand to be filled with divine light at the same time, or at different times she sat on an axle, or she had used the hem of her dress. So you have these kinds of actions, right? So divination through the water, right? Um, Unlike at Delphi, all oracles were to be written down, recorded, and then stored in a small structure. This building and its records were taken apart during the Christian era. 61 responses survive from the Oracle of Didyma. Some of it also were quoted by Periphery, Iamblichus, Lactantius, and Julian. They are divided in various modes. The first one are just simple commands and sanctions. The second are conditional commands. The third are clear prohibitions and warnings. The fourth are statements of past or future facts. Also, you have extraordinary statements of past and future facts. You also have non-predicative future statements, and then clear predictions, also conditional predictions, and of course, obscure ones as well, which goes very closely to the Oracle of Delphi. Unlike, however, the Delphic oracles, the oracles from Didyma often provide more in the way of backward context to why the question is being asked. The oracle often opens with a greeting or a statement of a type. For example, typically they'll say something like, "You have come to hear my mantic voice." How's that? I should use that one. You have, maybe before I do one of my talks or one of my lectures, I should say that you have come to hear my mantic voice, and see them all run away. Or you could say, "Blessed is this man, and his fame shall be wherever the sun shines." I like that one as an introduction. Or like a wide tree, you have thriving branches. Maybe that's my favorite. I don't know. Or I should answer your question. You have obeyed my oracles. It looks like a precondition, that is expected here. Well, you've been so obedient. I think I'll listen to you. An example of a clear prediction from the oracle of Didyma was recorded by Callisthenes, saying that the prophetess predicted within the year that Alexander the Great would be victorious, and Arbela and Darius would die. On both accounts, the prediction came true. In the second century CE, Alexandra, the priestess of Demeter, Thesmophorus from Miletus, had noticed she had noticed many manifestations of the gods lately and wondered if this was a lucky or unlucky portent. I'm seeing lots of gods and goddesses. Is this, I'm seeing it with my own eyes. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Apollo responded that the gods appear to mortals when they desire them to know their will and to remind them of the honors necessary to give to immortals. The rest of the response is cut off, but appears to be positive rather than a negative affirmation. Says, hey, we're showing ourselves, we're everywhere because, hey, it's time for you to acknowledge us, right? To worship us. The same stone records another question from Alexandra. She had two major questions apparently at this time. But here the first part is missing. But the response made by Apollo states that all of humanity, especially those at Miletus, should worship Demeter. For after all, it was she who changed the eating habits of humanity from eating raw meat to enjoying the blessings of her grains, her fruits, and other gifts. Apollo esteems Alexandra for her services to Demeter, and apparently this is why she was revealing herself to her. So Demeter's revealing herself to her because, hey, you're just a great priestess. Around 200 CE, the Milesians asked the oracle of Didyma concerning this is interesting, her name is Saturnalia. Sator, right? Nalia, whom the authorities wanted to make. They wanted to make her a priestess of Athena Polias. Now, here's the problem. The cult of Athena Polias, yes, it was the second most important deity of Miletus, and so such inquiries would be taken very seriously. Here's the problem. Was Saturnalia had been married and was also a mother. So how could she serve as a high priestess if she was not a virgin? For in the past, only high virgins were considered for this office, specifically to the goddess Athena. The 15-verse response made by Apollo survives in its entirety, which begins by greeting the entire city and then moves into telling the story of how Athena emerged directly from the head of Zeus and was both a warrior goddess, defender of cities, but also the inspiration for the arts. Athena was then self-appearing without a mother, and the inscription hints that she was also a virgin. But Saturnalia was not under Athena for much of her life because she was married. But instead, she was under Aphrodite, the goddess of marriage. So what's to be done? Well, in this very interesting response, Athena decides that she wills it. She has decided that Saturnalia can, even if she's married, become her priestess, that she wants her as her priestess, in fact. In obedience to Pallas and the Moirai, Athena has given her consent. Hence, through Saturnalia, Athena can then be reconciled to Aphrodite. This is the idea of bringing Athena and Aphrodite together. Isn't that cool? Okay. And then, of course, at the end of the third century, a certain Titus Flavinius Alpenius asked where he should place a certain altar, wishing to have it exactly where Apollo wanted it. Apollo praises him for his pious concern for details. Alpion next asks you where to place his holy table, but the reply is not extant. You gotta love the detail oriented people. They're kind of going through like, hey, um, where should I position this? Where should I place this? And I want to make sure I'm doing things correctly. The famous prophet Damenius made note of the fact that the altar circle at Didyma did not have an altar dedicated to Soterea Kor, who's connected to Persephone, who happened to be his ancestral goddess. And he wanted to know if he could establish one next to the altar of Demeter within the same circle. I mean, right? Demeter, Persephone. Apollo approved. Damanius Nas asked what her epithet should be here with this context, and Apollo responded that her name should that be Soterea Melokos, or gracious savior. In most instances, the oracle upheld ancestral traditions. For example, a certain Hermias asked if he should perform the same rite, the newer proposed way, or the way he had always performed. Apollo says, come on, keep it the same. Sometimes the questioner appears to be answering their own questions. For example, the woodcutters collective, these are woodcutters, kind of almost like a union, right? A club, asked Apollo why there was suddenly 9 deaths after adding that they saw Pan moving about causing terror. Not a big leap that it was Pan who's killing. So there you have it. Okay, so um, fascinating. There's so much there, so much to say. One bit of a dark kind of story. Yes, the temple of the Milesians, the temple of Didyma was destroyed, a few times, but it did survive uh, um, during the Roman era. And so when the temple of Artemis in Ephesus was destroyed by the Goths, the temple of Apollo Didyma actually built a wall and defended themselves against the Goths. The Goths did indeed arrive and surround the sanctuary, and it looked like the defenders were going to fail, for the water supply failed and they were dying of thirst. Suddenly, the spring began to flow, relieving them all, and the Goths gave up and left. There's a whole bunch of what happened is that previously the famous spring dried up, and they thought the oracles had stopped. But during this battle, the spring bubbled forth again, gave them hope, and once again, the temple of Didyma revived. The upsetting news is that people, less and less people started to go to Apollo at Didyma to visit, and tourism was at all-time low because so many in the area were converting over to Christianity. And so there's an emperor by the name of Diocletian, and he wasn't sure what to do because Christians seemed to be disloyal to many of his edicts and are not worshiping the images to the gods as they should. They're refusing. And of course, that's considered not being very patriotic. But he still didn't want to do it. Yes, he was Pontifex Maximus, head of the Roman religion. So therefore, theoretically, if you were not following the religion, you were not being loyal. But he didn't want to do it. So the Senate said, well, you know what? Why don't you ask Apollo? Why don't you ask the gods what you should do? So he went to he sent a message to Didyma. To the oracle site, to that exact spot where he saw that well. And the question was, what should we do with the Christians? And the answer was, because they do not worship the gods, they should be destroyed. And so this was the beginning here of one of the greatest persecutions of Christianity, which will be relieved after a while, especially with Constantine the Great. We'll do yeah, one and a half more sites, and then we'll close up because I would like to. We're not going to get to them all, but that's okay. Let's go to, but I want to get to the Oracle of the Plutonium Areopolis. Let's go to the next image. Oh, I want to show you this. I just want to show you. Here's Apollo at Didyma. Just want to show you some of the images around the artwork, and we'll kind of move through these. And of course, you got Gorgon's next image. It's pretty amazing. Next image, I highly recommend if you go to next image, there's the bull there, right? And of course, you have the griffins there. Next image, just amazing the detail that you see here. Beautiful, beautiful. Next image. And that's what it looks like, kind of blurry there, but you get the idea. Next image. Okay, this is my picture. This picture goes back to 1993. This is originally how the plutonium looked like with this like little grating, this screen in front of it. This is the oracle. This is the doorway to the underworld. A rather curious oracle in Asia Minor is the Plutonium at Areopolis that is established above a cave that emits toxic gas. Because this underground gas was lethal, the assumption was that Pluto was the source for it. While sacred to Pluto, there was also an identification with Cybele, the goddess, for her Galli, those castrated priests sacred to her, used to enter into this cave, which you see right here, descend down into its depths, and emerge unscathed. Yet, to demonstrate how lethal the cave really was, birds and other animals were sent into the cave and were instantly killed by the gases. For tourists and skeptics alike, animals were sold for this purpose. They're brought in and dragged out via ropes. Strabo writes, first near the Mesogus, opposite Laodicea to Areopolis, where are the hot springs and the plutonium, both of which have something marvelous about them. For the water of the springs so easily congeals and changes into stone that people conduct streams of it through ditches and thus make stone fences consisting of single stones. While the plutonium below a small brow of the mountainous country that lies above it is an opening of only moderate size that you see here, large enough to admit a man, but it reaches a considerable depth, and it is enclosed by a quadrilateral handrail about half a plectrum in circumference, and this space is full of vapor, so misty and dense that one can scarcely see the ground. Now, to those who approach the handrail anywhere around the enclosure, the air is harmless, since the outside is free from that vapor in calm weather, for the vapor then stays inside the enclosure. But any animal that passes inside meets instant death. At any rate, bulls that are led into it fall and are drugged out of dead. And I threw in sparrows, and they immediately breathed their last and fell. But the Galli, who are eunuchs, pass inside with such impunity that they even approach the opening, bend over, and descend into it to a certain depth, though they hold their breath as much as they can, for I could see in their countenances an indication of a kind of suffocating attack, as it were. Whether this immunity belongs to all who are maimed in this way, or only to those around the temple, or whether it is because of divine providence, as would seem likely in the case of divine obsessions, or whether it is the result of certain physical powers that are antidotes against the vapor, I know not. So you can see, yeah. And by the way, it was still dangerous. It still had vapors coming from it in 1993. So at certain times the winds would blow. They'd say, "Hey, you guys, don't get too near to it." It became somewhat of a problem. And so I want you to kind of memorize what you see here, and I'll show you a later picture that I have of it later on. Next image. But this is how the complex looked. It's kind of blurry. Back in 1993, they had, just like a rumble of marble, these stones everywhere. Next image. And you can see there's the theater beyond. You can see the steps there. not in great condition. I'm sorry, but these pictures are fading because, again, I took them in 1993. Next image. You can see the surrounding area. Next image. This is what they did to it. That screen is gone. They bricked it up. And they're like, hey, you know what? We're not doing this anymore. They had people that were trying to break in and to go and explore, and they had some issues, medical issues afterwards. They have also completely rebuilt the complex. Next image. So here it is from above. Look how beautiful, as compared to what I showed you earlier. Look how beautiful they fixed this oracle site, this plutonium. Next image. I'm loving this. Look at this. Look at that. How great that is. This is, I was very upset at the condition of some of these sites. This is an example of a site done right. And I think they did a great job. You really have an idea of what it looked like. Next image. In fact, you can see its reconstruction here and kind of what it looked like. Pliny the Elder states also, he says that Areopolis he says, here it is. There is a temple, a place which kills all those who enter it, he says, and the same takes place at Areopolis in Asia, where no one can enter with safety except the priest of the great mother of gods. In other places, there are prophetic caves and so forth and so on. The gas is basically carbon dioxide that is generated as a result of all the geothermal activity in the area. Today, it is still just as deadly as it was in ancient times because of the fact that carbon dioxide is heavier than air. The priests may have taken breaths from various higher places like hollows in the tunnel above. Before the Plutonian, there is an enclosure area of 2,000 square meters, formed a forecourt with seats located directly above the cave to facilitate visitors as they watch the Galli and animals go into the cave. To the left of the cave was a round temple with a conical roof of the Ionic order and having inscriptions dedicated to Pluto and Cor. Directly in front of the place of the cave was a pool where visitors were permitted to drink the water. I wouldn't do it. Breathe in the fumes arriving from the caves. Again, I would not do that. And then go into an incubation chamber to dream what the dreams were asking them, gods were asking them to do. These gases could very well produce hallucinations because of the way the square was organized as intentionally separate from the surrounding area. To go down to drink from the pool must have also been regulated on a pay-by-pay basis, right? I wouldn't do any of this, but yeah, if you're breathing it in, I guess you're going to have a nice sleep. Lots of prophecies. So this is an incubation chamber. So here the oracles, the prophecies come by way to the general public through the gases through dreaming, but also, of course, the priestesses also. So the priests do work in this. This plutonium was viewed as sacred to the oracle of Pluto. And so those who wished to know what they should do in any given situation asked the Galli, paid a sum, and then the Galli went down into the plutonium to ask the god of the underworld himself. So you can either ask the priest, or you can go ahead and opt to drink the water, breathe in the fumes, and do it yourself. And wake up with a headache. Next image. Okay. All right. So there you have it. So there's the steam coming forth. I love it. Okay. So I just from here I want to close up. I just want to I'm going to show. I'm not going to talk. I just want to show you that there's other oracle sites. I just want you to have some ooh and ah moments. There's also the oracle of Trophonius at Lombardia. Let's take a look at these images real quick. They're small. This is, of course, connected to Zeus, Trophimus. The oracle, next image, has a descent into the earth consisting of an underground chasm. This is how it looked like earlier on, into the modern age. Next image. And the person who consults the oracle descends into it himself. It is situated between Mount Helicon in Greece. By the way, Trophonius is known, sometimes he's considered a man, sometimes a god. And for Roman tax gatherers, they're going, well, we can't tax a god. but they determined that it was, since it was first a man and then a god, they decided that this site had to be taxed. Thank you, Romans. Next image. So this includes, of course, a descent. This would be worthy of a whole nother talk. Maybe I'll just do it on this site. Descent into the underworld. And you can see that here, next image here, there's all these legends and stories that are extremely interesting. But let's move on from there. We have the Necromantium of Hades at Epirus. And again, another oracle site, also connected to Hades and the underworld. Let's quickly take a look. Next image, you take a look at that. Wow, right? So as you can see, next image, next image, next image. And then, of course, you have the Oracle, the Sibyl at Cumae. And so we'll just take a look here. Next image. It's pretty amazing. Look at this, so you can see these caves are still there. And this is where this oracle site, you actually get to go, supposedly go down into the underworld to visit the river Styx. Next image. And so they have discovered the tunnels, and you really do go to an underground stream. What they kind of do is you go down this descent. There's torches on the other side. They've already kind of drugged you out a little bit. And so you think you're visiting the underworld. And then towards the end, there is a river Styx. There's a platform there. And apparently you believe you got there. And then, of course, you hopefully journey back. Let's take a look at what it looks like. Just a few brief pictures. You go down you go down into the tunnel here. Next image. And this is the big entryway. You can see some of the four buildings that are in front of the complex. This is looking out towards the exit. Next image, or entrance. This is the hall where they used to have the torches. We go into the underworld to receive these messages. Next image, going directly. There's smoke that's still there from the lamps. Next image, and you have this interesting place. You have a split. There's two different paths that split into. This was used to be you have to crawl through. In the ancient days, you could stand up and walk through it. We do know where the left one leads. It leads back to an earlier tunnel. The one on the right, we have no idea where it goes. It goes to places unknown. Perhaps it does go into the underworld. Ooh. Next image. And of course, you also have the from there, this while the other was the Oracle of the Dead at Baiae. This one is Cumae. This is where you go visit the Oracle. So the other one was you're going to go into the underworld. This is where you visit the famous Sibyl Oracle. Let's go through this real briefly. Next image. This is a little hole that they can actually bring you down this hole from above. If you don't want to go down in another direction, I actually kind of haul you down and then bring you back up again. Next image. And this is the site where the famous Sibyl used to sit. And so there you have it. Next image. And there I am, at my famous Claros, a great image of the labyrinth, telling you farewell. we covered quite a bit, and you got more detail than you would possibly expect. Hopefully you enjoyed our journey into to these oracle places, to these places of mysteries, as well as conversations, places where you connect with the gods, with the goddesses, with the ancestors, with the spirits. I think it's so fascinating, the great diversity of ways that these oracles operated. But all in all, these are mechanisms in order for us to facilitate us to have a conversation, to alleviate our fears and our worries, and to satisfy our anxieties. You go to these places, and the belief is the gods, the goddesses can answer your questions. And maybe it really did happen. Maybe it's all psychological. But at the same time, I find many of these places quite inspiring. And I'm hoping that after you see some of these images, that you yourself will decide to also make a journey into these great places. I'm sorry this talk was pretty had a lot of length to it, but also am very happy that so much of what I've always wanted to talk about got to be said. And so I say good night and pleasant oracle dreams.